I wanted to ask everyone if tonight we could dedicate our moment of silence to Larry Cohen, who recently passed. He was a significant member of our community. He put a lot of energy and effort into memorializing our flood recovery efforts. And, we haven't recognized this in the past. I thought it was appropriate that we do. So, thank you. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And could you please flip Trustee Roberts back to neutral? He's voting. He's not here.
Yes.
Now we have 5-0. Thank you very much. 2 absent. Okay, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Sergeant Chris for Sheriff's report.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So I just have a few things to talk about real quick. We're gearing up this Saturday for a couple events in town. The Drug Take Back Day that we always do. That'll take place over at the substation. We'll have some posters set out here soon. I know some e-blasts have gone out. And then later that day, we'll be doing the Spooktacular Parade. All the IAPs are done and submitted, and everything's looking good there. Last week, we visited the lot over there for the zombie tour deal. Myself, JJ, and some town staff, and Marissa, just to double check all the safety and get their operations plan of what they were going to be doing and all that. JJ had a couple small concerns that they were able to address. So my deputies are aware, and we have a map of the little zombie tour thing around town that they're going to do. So it looks like that's going to be set up and ready to go. I stopped in at the LEAF program at the church at 4th and Main last Wednesday. I try to make a habit of just hitting that spot when they do the food give outs and stuff. The ladies have asked for our assistance just to make a presence every now and then, just to see how things are going. Everything's fine. There's nothing to be worried about. It's just nice they do a really good job over there, and I just wanted to shout out to those ladies that set that stuff up, and they hand out a lot of food, and they have it very well organized. So it's always neat to go over there and meet up with everybody and just check in. Since the 28th of September, that was a Saturday night or a Friday night that we gave out a ticket to the Lion's Den. We've only received one complaint. The complaint we had was in the middle of the day on a Sunday. The complaint didn't come in while the music was going. It came in about 4 or 5 hours later. So obviously, once again, when we arrived there was nothing going on. So it seemed like a very minor complaint, but that's the only issue we've had from the Lion's Den since that time. So I believe the owners have hold true to their word, saying that they weren't going to be doing any more live outdoor electrical amplified music. So that seems to have settled down a little bit. We're still going to meet up, I think, again towards the end of the year and try to tackle some of the long-term goals and mid-range goals that we had set during our community meeting with the owners of the Lion's Den and the residents. Hopefully nip this before it takes off next spring. So that's still on the agenda. The last thing I want to just mention real quick is, as you guys know, our staffing changes from year to year for our patrol guys. You're stuck with me for another year. I hope that's okay. I do enjoy being up here, but everybody has approved another tenure for a year extension for me. But Gary Robinson is going to move on to the mountains next year. So he will leave Lyons January 25th, and his new post will be up here in the northern part of the mountains. So we're still going to see Gary passing through. He'll still remain a fixture of the town. He's done a lot of really good work here, and he really he's a very large example of community policing and what we like to have in this town. And I will pass on that he was very torn putting in for this position because it was a win-win for him, because he really didn't want to leave Lyons, but he really enjoys the mountain gig that he had before, and he kind of wanted to go back there and do more mountain patrols. So it's kind of a bittersweet for Gary and bittersweet for me, but we'll have a new deputy up here. I don't know who that will be yet, but once January comes around, the bids get settled, I'll bring him in or her and get that person introduced to everybody. So that is all I have tonight.
All right, any questions for Sergeant Christ? Well, I'm glad to hear we will have you for another year at least.
Thank
You
you.
may lobby for more if we hear they're thinking of changing plans, but please pass on our thanks to Gary and
Absolutely.
wish him well in his new
Betcha.
post.
You bet.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to staff reports.
Thank you. Our first report will be a finance update. Well, that would help.
Need less lights.
So our financial update is going to be for the financials through September 30th. So in the month of September, we had revenues of $686,249. We had most of those in the general fund, of course, at 35%, followed by the electric fund at 21%. For expenditures, we had $456,137 that was spent in September. Again, the majority coming out of the general fund at 29%, followed by the electric fund at 24%. So September revenues and expenses. September was actually a good month all the way across the board. Revenues exceeded expenditures in all funds except for the sanitation fund. In looking at year-to-date, from January through September, the revenues were higher in the general fund, the electric fund, and the stormwater fund. So we've been talking a lot about operating versus one-time revenues and expenditures. The top chart is going to show you the operating, and the bottom chart will show you the one-time revenues. The difference in these two is we took out of the first one, the building planning, one-time grants, donations, tap fees, investment fees, home additions fees, flood expenses, capital purchases, and debt. We put those into the bottom chart. The total of these two charts makes our year-to-date chart. So as you can see, operating, we actually do very well. Our revenues exceed our expenditures in all cases. On the one-time revenues, however, we don't have, or one-time revenues and expenditures, we don't have enough revenues of one-time category to offset all of the expenses that we have. So when we look at revenue compared to budget, we look at the budget, it's calculated as the whole 12 months divided by 12. That's how we do it. It's at 75% is where we're at through the year. The general fund has received 98% of our budgeted property taxes for the year. Additionally, specific ownership and franchise taxes remain above budget. Many of the fee categories, such as business licenses, non-business licenses, and floodplain development fees, are exceeding budget. The highway users tax is below expectation at only 45% of budget. Items pushing up the electric fund revenues is the bond refunding, which we've already talked about. Metered water sales in the water fund are catching up at 70%. And the sanitation fund is close at 72% of expected revenues. So on expenditures compared to budget, The information in this slide, again, looks at expenditures compared to budget. The budget is divided over 12, and then we're looking at 9 months of that. 75% of the fiscal year has elapsed. The general fund has several line items which exceeded budget. However, the fund overall is within budget. The building inspection department has not had the expected expense due to Summit delaying their permits. Additionally, Boulder County Sheriff's September invoice was not received until October, so we'll see a double up in October. The visitor center had some electrical maintenance in September, which put that department over budget. But again, the whole general fund is well within budget. The electric fund has been reporting higher expenditures to budget from the refunding, which has already been reported. The water department is right where it should be at 75% of budget, and the sanitation department is running higher than budget for treatment, but all other divisions are below budget. So in the treatment division, the outside professional services and the sludge disposal remain high due to problems with the plant. They're at 86% and 188% respectively. The stormwater fund is below budget on all categories except for capital, which has been expended at 100%. Parks and Recreation is below budget in all categories except capital. Capital is at 80% of budget. However, there are no new capital expenditures in September. When we look at revenues compared 2019 versus 2018, usually these are very comparable from year to year. The one thing you're going to see is the electric fund. Again, that's that refunding that we've been talking about quite frequently. You do see also in the sanitation fund, these are the effects of the rate increases that we've had. Everything else is very comparable. When we look at expenditures from 2019 to 2018, again, we're going to see most things to be very comparable. The general fund is going to be off quite a bit. There was some realignment of salaries and some other administration costs, which we reallocated. So that's making that one be a little bit different. The electric fund, again, that's that refunding. Everything else is very comparable. So when we look at each fund by quarter, the general fund has revenues exceeding the expenditures for all quarters. The electric fund, again, you're going to see revenues exceeding expenditures for the first and the third quarter. The second quarter, again, due to the refunding. For the water fund, you're going to see the revenues are going up. So our first quarter, our revenues were lower than the second quarter. And of course, the third quarter, where we're using a lot more water, you see that actually go up quite a bit. We have debt service in this fund. So you're going to see debt service in the first quarter and the third quarter, which makes those be a little higher than normal. When we look at the sanitation fund, again, our revenues are going up. That's a good trend. But the sanitation fund has had a little bit of a struggle with debt service and some challenges with the plant. We look at the stormwater fund, the revenues are very level. We've been seeing a little bit more expenses, which will come in as we start ramping up into maintenance for the fourth quarter. But for right now, everything is very steady. And as we look at Parks and Recreation, our revenues did not exceed the expenditures for any of the quarters. However, we are looking at them being very comparable. So the fees that we're receiving are covering our expenses for the most part. When we looked at operating for this fund, the operating revenues do exceed the expenditures. It's the capital piece that's pushing those up a little bit higher. This is a really cool chart because if you see where we're at for August for 2019, that's going to be the highest sales tax that we have had for the last 3 years. So that's pretty awesome. The amount that we received in September of 2019 was $146,652. And again, that's the highest that we have seen in the last 3 years, beating September of 2017 by $1,794. So pretty awesome. The occupancy and lodging tax, in September that dropped back down. We did see quite a bit of an increase in August with camping and the festivals, but it's back down in September, and we're kind of at the back end of that now, so it'll continue to decrease as we go down in the year. The budget for this account is set at $23,000, and actual year to date is $11,236. When we look at the sanitation service charges, when we look at year-to-year comparison, we have actually increased our rates. So we're seeing a 42% increase over 2018 year-to-date. The rate increases account for $108,000 of that, of the revenue. Additionally, starting with April, we did the BOD surcharge, which has generated an additional $49,000 of revenue, averaging about $8,200 per month. And again, the commercial customers are paying 93% of that BOD revenue. That's all I got. Any questions?
Any questions for the finance director? Very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Administratively, we just have a few items we want to mention tonight. We're able to finally host the tour of the Boulder County acquired parcels this last couple of weeks. And so we had members of the Planning Commission, Ecology Board, Park and Rec Commission staff, and Boulder County staff went and looked at probably about 12 different parcels that are located in Apple Valley that Boulder County is interested in transferring the ownership of those deed restricted parcels to the town. So I believe each of those different boards and commissions are meeting to talk about a recommendation back to you, and we hope to see that in November. Tonight you do have the Martin parcel on the agenda for consideration of acquiring that parcel. That is being handled separately. It was one of the first to be done, and the rest will be considered as a whole in November. We have been working hard, as you knew from your workshop tonight, on the 2020 budget, and we are planning to finalize our budget to present to you on November 4th, so we'll be taking any public input on the budget at that time, if anyone in the community is interested in participating. I was really happy to meet with City of Longmont recently. They have hired both a new Longmont Power Director as well as a new Nextlight Broadband Director. We had a really productive meeting with them and discussed our longer-term needs that we have as individual communities, and also possibilities of some partnerships in both of those areas. So we will continue to work with them cooperatively and hopefully be on their list for potential extension of fiber service as they build out Longmont, the city itself. We do want to mention the spooktacular that Sergeant Christ mentioned. That games will start at 4 p.m. at the Lyons Elementary School on Saturday, with parade lineup at 5:45 and the parade at 6 o'clock. And that's always a fun time, and I think we have good staffing for that event.
We're fully staffed, and we added an additional from last year.
Mm-hmm.
I know all the town's got the cones and everything ready, and we'll do that lane shift that we did before. So Broadway will become 2 lanes in and out of town, which allows for no detours or backups. So it's a little different than the Parade of Lights, where we have the detour. So this one's a little easier to manage. It's just that initial 5-10 minutes of traffic shift, and then once it gets flowing, it'll be good. But we always build in about a 45-minute buffer to allow that to happen and flush out anybody that's within the footprint of the parade. The cars will have signs up on Main Street asking for people to remove their cars, and we'll do sweeps like that, so all the kiddos and people are safe. And the weather's looking good for it, so I think 62 degrees that day. So
69 now.
yeah, 69, even better. Oh boy.
And then it's pretty exciting. We're going to be hosting a new running event, actually sponsored by the Junior Olympics, USA Track and Field Colorado. We'll be hosting their championship meet here at Bone Park on Saturday, November 9th. So they are expecting 400 runners and their families. And if all goes well for that group, they're going to look at holding their regional event in the fall of next year that would have 800 runners. So we have quite a weekend boost in our events between the cross-country team and this new event. So that's kind of fun. Let's see what else. Oh, we do want to let folks know that we have introduced, that's the correct word, about 100 grass-eating carp into the Lines Valley River Park ponds to help with the grass and algae situation there, as well as about 1,000 minnows that will eat mosquito larvae. The carp are all sterile, so there is no problem if one gets introduced to the river or of them becoming overpopulated. And this is basically part of the strategy to help balance the new ecosystem in the ponds. So there is no fishing allowed in that pond, but right now they're 8 to 12 inches long, and they will grow up to about 36 inches, 20 to 30 pounds max. So there's going to be a lot of carp in there, and it was all done by scientists and biologists to determine how much algae will be generated, or grass, and the carp at their fullest size. So something new to look at out there when you're there. And I think the rest of this will be covered under boards and commissions. Other than we are getting ready to go to a new software system to be able to reserve our shelters and our pretty much shelters, I guess, at Laverne Johnson Park to an online system similar to what we did with camping a couple of years ago that proved really successful and efficient. So we're going to be trying that out in the spring and see how that goes for everyone. So, questions?
No questions, but I did want to say to our town attorney, congratulations on your wedding this weekend. And we hope it all goes wonderfully well. We know it will because it will be here in Lyons during the Halloween parade. So what could go wrong, right? But we wish you the best. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I think you're up next, actually.
I am up next. So I'm going to give a legal update regarding the fire district. You'd asked me to research a specific question concerning the fire district and whether they had a duty to basically protect and, treat fires on all structures within the town, which in the boundaries of their district. And it's actually a really interesting question the more research you do into it, because there was a law passed in 1981, which kind of set the duties and responsibilities and powers of fire districts. And the law is actually very vague as to what the duties of the fire district are, what actually obligations it has. And this uncertainty kind of stayed around the law for a very long time into this day. In 2001, Attorney General Ken Salazar actually had put out an opinion at the request of DOLA as to just what the duties and responsibilities of a fire district are. And so as part of that opinion, Attorney General Salazar was addressing two of the exact same questions that you addressed to me. One, whether a fire protection district must fight fires within the district. And then two, whether a fire protection district is under an obligation to acquire firefighting equipment. And the answers to both questions is no, with some caveats. And so according to Attorney General Salazar, the obligation to fight a fire only arises upon the acquisition of firefighting equipment. And firefighting equipment, the fire protection district has no legal obligation to acquire firefighting equipment. And so if the district doesn't acquire the necessary equipment to fight the fire, no obligation exists to fight that fire. Interestingly enough, for the sheriff's department, the duty then lies upon the sheriff's department to fight the fire if the fire district refuses to do so.
have even less equipment.
And unfortunately for you guys, there is no, you don't have the equipment. You have to fight the fire apparently, or call upon resources to fight the fire if you don't have your own resources to fight it. And, the reason for this was there's a lot of different fire districts in Colorado which actually have no resources. They just contract out everything to different entities. There's mainly a tax collection agency and not really an actual firefighting district. And so that was a lot of the reasoning behind the Attorney General's opinion. If the fire district and the town did want to acquire equipment to fight fires, there are several mechanisms under the state law to do so. One is, general revenue collection through a tax increase that they have the power to collect as a special district. And the second, and I think the fire district has kind of alluded to this idea, is that there can be impact fees upon new development associated with the necessity to acquire the equipment to treat that development. And so the way that works is there has to be an IGA between the town and the fire district, basically setting out a fee schedule, saying these are the fees we're going to charge for development, which would then be used to finance equipment, which could be used to, fight fires in these larger structures that we've seen being proposed in the town. And so that's kind of what my research has shown, not, the answers we were looking for, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions? How are you going to help us fight those fires, I guess is my question to you.
I'll call the whole world to come in here and fight whatever you.
Aren't you glad you stuck around? All right. Okay. I don't think we have any more questions at this time. All right.
So if there is no further questions on the fire district question, I did one other legal update I wanted to give, if it's okay with you guys. As you know, we've been in the eviction process for the property the town owns with that Paul Freisig is leasing from the town. I think the last we talked, the court had vacated our hearing date and ordered mediation as a standard practice they do. We talked to Mr. Freisig and said, quite frankly, we really need immediate access to this property in order to construct the utility project, the sewer project the town is working on. Mr. Freisig said that he had no problem with the town constructing the sewer project and that he would allow us access to that property anytime. We asked him if he'd sign an agreement, basically agreeing to that, and he said, "Oh, of course, we would do that." We sent over that agreement, standard agreement that's been used on many other properties in town for construction access. On Monday, late today, we received a certified mailing from Mr. Freisig, not assigning our agreement, but proposing his own new agreement, which has several conditions. One including a water share, a water tap, and a sewer tap. Two, that we would sell the property to him for $3,300, and then three, that we would drop all legal action against him. Just want to let you know that's happening. Our next strategy is to file an injunction against him to allow us immediate access to the property so we can construct our sewer project. Just wanted to give you a quick update on that matter.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Anything else from staff? Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is audience business. This is the portion of the meeting where the audience is welcome to approach the board on topics that are not on tonight's agenda for a public hearing or public comment. We will have a separate public comment period for the pay-as-you-throw program later in the agenda. So if you're here to speak on that issue, please wait until we have the public comment specifically for that after we've heard a presentation about the program. If you're here for some other reason and would like to approach the board now, you're welcome to do so. Each person will have 4 minutes. Give your name and address for the record when you come forward, and I believe we have a sign-up sheet, so I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Jerry Moore.
While since I've been
I'm sorry.
but I'll try to remember the rules. My name is Jerry Moore. I reside at 3416 Iris Court in Boulder. I have a letter that I'd like to read, and then I'll give Deb a copy of that and the attachments as well. Board of Trustees. I recently became aware that the town of Lyons had undertaken a project involving relocation of a public water pipeline on the property addressed as 500 West Main, also known as Planet Bluegrass. On Thursday of last week, I visited the project site, and the work appears to be near completion. I was curious whether the town obtained an easement from the property owner, so I stopped by Town Hall and asked Deb for a copy of the documents, if such an easement had been granted. She provided me copies of the Town of Lyons Resolution 2019-91, along with the permanent easement agreement and Exhibit A as recorded at reception numbers 03734673 and 0374159 with Boulder County Clerk and Recorder, copies of which are attached. My concern with this matter stems from the fact that the legal description on Exhibit A of the easement agreement correctly notes the property owner as Craig Ferguson et al. And I'm the et al. That's referenced. Mr. Ferguson and I are personally tenants in common with respect to ownership in the property at 500 West Main. However, the other easement documents and the Board of Trustees resolution incorrectly indicate the property owner as Planet Bluegrass Annex LLC, who is not an owner of the property and of which I am not a member. I've had an ownership interest in this property since 1990, paid property taxes, and have supported the town of Lyons through development of commercial enterprises that continue to provide significant economic benefit to the town. The town, through its government, has a responsibility to fairly and professionally serve all of its landowners, whether resident or not. I'm extremely unhappy that the town neither sought nor received my approval before doing significant construction work on my property. Before I engage legal counsel concerning this situation, I will make myself available to meet as soon as possible with authorized members of the Board of Trustees or administrative staff to address and hopefully achieve an equitable resolution of this predicament. Any questions?
We generally don't ask questions or
Okay.
respond during audience business.
All right,
We just
good.
are here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Kenyon Hua.
Good evening. Kenyon Hua, 639 3rd Avenue. I also have a letter that I sent to the board earlier today and copied the town administrator, but I'd like to read it out loud. Board of Trustees, we have discovered that over a half a dozen instances of property owners being forced to prove ownership of previously purchased water taps. These incidents range from taps purchased in the 1950s through the 1980s and beyond. The validity of these claims was questioned or disputed by the town staff based on poor or incomplete town records. These cases have included the town charging a resident for utilities for several years and then claiming the landowner did not own a water tap, and also forcing a landowner to produce a canceled check proving payment for a water tap processed nearly a decade earlier. These landowners, our neighbors, have spent considerable time and personal expense to prove an existing contract with the town. In many cases, the town is the only persistent participant in these transactions as properties are exchanged, bought, and sold. The town records are the only source of consistency. The town has proven time and time again that it has not kept consistent or complete records related to water taps and many other topics, I'll add utilities. Even in 2019, the only source of truth for water taps is a paper ledger kept in a building located in a floodplain with no other proof or backup. The town has displayed a pattern of behavior of burdening landowners due to their inability to keep accurate and complete records. This is both troubling and costly to the entire community, and we implore the board to address issues with safeguarding of these very important records. Thank you for consideration in this matter.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business?
We have one thing. She wanted you to do it at audience
You
business.
can call for others first.
Okay. Anyone else who didn't sign up want to speak during audience business?
Not pay
Come
as you
forward.
throw.
It's not for the pay-as-you-throw program. That'll come later. But if you have something else, okay.
And there's a sign-up sheet for pay as you throw as well, if you want to send that around. Here you go. We do have
Okay.
one thing that Laverne Johnson asked to have read into the record
Yes,
tonight.
please. Thank
She's
you.
unable to be here. She is asking us to announce that they are having a meeting at the library Wednesday, October 23rd at 6:30 p.m. for anyone who's interested in having, writing, editing a weekly newspaper online for Lyons. So all are invited to attend. Wednesday, October 23rd at 6:30 PM.
Okay, great. If there's no one else, we'll end audience business and move on to board and commission updates. So I'd like to invite Mr. Sean Cronin from the St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District to come on up, and he's going to give us a report. And whoever else he's going to bring with him. We have a couple members of our ecology board also. All right. Maybe you can just all introduce yourselves for the audience. So there you go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean Cronin with St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District. I'm the executive director, and thank you, Board of Trustees, for inviting us in tonight to share with you a bit about the district, the presentations from soup to nuts, and we're going to tell you everything you need to know about the Conservancy District in 10 minutes or less. So I'll allow these folks to introduce themselves as well.
Good evening, Steve Sims, Chairman for the Ecology Advisory Board.
Kurt Carlson, I'm on the Ecology Board. I'm also represent District 6 of the of Water Conservancy District. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. So I titled this Your Water Conservancy District, and it was intentional on my part because we are a constituency-based organization, and I'll go through exactly how that is, but it's all of you, the property owners within our district boundaries, that it is your conservancy district. Conservancy districts were created out of the Water Conservancy Act from 1937. It's a state legislative act, and in my humble opinion, one of the most brilliant statewide acts by the legislature. What they realized back in the 30s and the drought of the 30s is that it takes a regional approach through collaboration and cooperation to provide water solutions to communities. And as you can imagine, many of the communities in Colorado at that time were one or less stoplight towns, and they recognized that it took a larger area to be able to fund water solutions. Today, there's roughly about 50 water conservancy districts across the state, and we are your local water conservancy district. Many of the missions are the same for all the conservancy districts. Many people are familiar with the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. They have a whole lot more staff and a lot more budget, and are the local managers of a federal project. Many of the 50 are not that kind of water conservancy district. You're looking at half the staff of our water conservancy district as an example. The mission, though, is pretty similar throughout all the conservancy districts: education, development and management of water projects, water conservation, water distribution, water quality protection, and legislation. I'll give you a few examples of those. We're also a taxing authority, and many are not aware of that, so I wanted to give you a little bit on that and talk to you about our board of directors as well. Next slide, please. So this is a map showing the extent of our boundaries as a water conservancy district. If you look to the west, it's the Continental Divide up in Rocky Mountain National Park. If you look to the east, it goes all the way to the confluence of the South Platte. The northern boundary goes a little bit into Larimer County, and the southern boundary goes just to the kind of northern edge of Boulder Reservoir. We are a fairly unique water conservancy district in Colorado in that our district boundaries are follow the hydrologic boundaries of the watershed. Many other water conservancy districts do not. It puts us in a unique position where we can look at things holistically from a watershed scale, and it also gives us opportunities to really manage water supplies in a different way. Next slide, please. So water districts is education. I wanted to show you this example. We host an annual tour. Many of you probably recognize that site. That is the CBT delivery point into St. Vrain, just downstream of Lyons. In our experience, many of the water challenges come with people who are blissfully ignorant on purchasing homes with water rights or lack thereof. So we put together a program where we educate realtors on the many landmines associated with water law and water rights, and it's been well attended in the past, and we typically take them to this site to give them a little education about the CBT project, the Colorado Big Thompson project. Next slide, please. This is Lake Fork Reservoir. This is a reservoir that we built along with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. You'll recognize CMEX in the distance there. So it's between Lyons and Longmont. It's a 600 acre-foot lined gravel pit reservoir. That reservoir is available to us as part of the augmentation program that I'll speak about later. But we also own that with Boulder County Parks and Open Space, who is thinking about recreation trail opportunities, which I'm sure you're well aware of. Next slide, please. We couldn't talk about St. Vrain Left-Hand Water Conservancy District, and certainly couldn't be here in the town of Lyons without showing a big reservoir just upstream of Town Hall. Many of you in the room are probably aware of Coffin Top. I'd be remiss if I did not embrace the idea that that was our original charter when we first got created in 1971. That reservoir obviously was not built, but the water right is still a living water right, which means it has value to the community. And prior to the flood, I engaged many in this community as well as within our watershed about what do we want to do with that water right. It is our water right collectively as a community. There's a variety of different things that I think we can do to realize value, none of which involve pouring concrete just upstream of Town Hall. But I wanted to continue to keep that conversation alive, and as you all can relate to, the flood kind of distracted us away from that conversation for many years, and I think many of us have the bandwidth now to re-engage in that kind of conversation. Next slide, please. We also do quite a bit in water conservation. We do not have programs that we provide, but we do bring relevant, timely information to a lot of our constituents. So this was a workshop where we learned a great deal about how businesses are really interested in not only what communities are doing in way of power and climate change, but they're also very interested in knowing what the water plan is. What are you as a community going to do to secure water supplies? How are you addressing climate change? And we've been working with local communities to make sure that their messages are rooted in factual information as well as provide them good opportunities to communicate that to potential businesses. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier the augmentation program, and that's a legal term in water law where we provide water to folks that otherwise wouldn't have available water supplies provided to them. This is an outlet station from that Lake Fork Reservoir that goes to St. Vrain Creek. There are some in this room that are members of the augmentation program. We have about 200 members throughout the district boundaries. The amount of water we provide is about 200 acre-foot. If you're not familiar with an acre-foot, it's 325,000 gallons. So we provide about 200 acre-foot of augmentation water, 200 members. It's about an acre-foot of water supply, which in the scheme of water providers is not a tremendous amount of water. So we provide a niche service where we provide small amounts of water for small individual uses. As I said, some of whom, those 200 members, live here in Lyons and the surrounding community. They otherwise wouldn't have water supplies available to them unless we were providing this augmentation water. Next slide, please. We also get heavily involved in water quality programs. This is an example where we got water quality scientists as well as folks who collect water quality all together in a room and did a real novel experiment where we had them talk to each other. And we actually found that there were gaps in how we collected data. There were gaps in where we were collecting data. And from that information, individual entities were able to broaden their water quality services. Next slide, please. We also do quite a bit with legislation, and I'm proud to say I was not subpoenaed to be here at that Senate hearing, but we were able to provide good information on a couple of fronts. The first thing is we were there to advocate for 501c12 ditch companies so that when they receive federal dollars, either from the flood recovery or other sources, that they wouldn't actually lose their 501c12 status. That issue is still under federal consideration from a variety of fronts. Not surprising, things get kind of hung up there. The other issue, however, we were able to get some traction on is I was there during the flood recovery and also provided testimony on how the CDBG dollars and the FEMA dollars and the like were important to communities, and we were very successful in getting more funding to this community. Next slide, please. So we are embarking on what's called a stream management plan, and really everything that I talked to you about what the district does is really comes to a head within the context of this stream management plan. This is something that the local community came to us and said, we'd like to know how we could manage the streams in a more effective manner, and I'll give you a couple examples of that. First off, you may be familiar with the previous slide I showed you where the CBT system goes into the St. Vrain Creek. Locals here who kayak call that the October hole. Do you know why they call that the October hole? Because it delivers water in October. However, many in the kayaking community, I've been out there talking to them in October, I asked them, where does the water come from? And some say it comes from the Poudre River. Others thought it came from the city of Longmont. Many just pointed to the mountains and said, there. And so it was a great education opportunity that's actually Colorado River and Fraser River water that's stored in Carter Lake and eventually made over and put down into Boulder Reservoir, and they're making that management operation to make room for spring runoff the next year. So we have an example where we're delivering water for beneficial uses, for domestic uses, for agricultural uses, but folks are able to recreate on it. So you can expand on that and start having conversations amongst the variety of water users and say, is there ways that we could manage the water supplies that we have and provide environmental and recreation benefits? So the stream management plan is an example of that. Or rather, the stream management plan will explore other examples of that. I'll give you another example. Many of you may know that the South St. Vrain Creek has a diversion that takes water out of South St. Vrain Creek and puts it into Left Hand Creek. It's actually a historic location. Much of the water loss system was based on that diversion. So those of us who are water geeks are pretty fond of that particular location. The South St. Vrain water typically gets diverted in Mayish time. Many of you in this room know what happens in this community around the end of May is Lions outdoor games. Those outdoor games are important to the community for a variety of reasons, and water is an important piece to that. So we have facilitated conversations between the leaders of that Lions outdoor games and the owners of that water right, and we've had a couple instances, not last year, but years prior, where they forgoed that diversion to allow that water to come down through this area. So those are two examples where we can work cooperatively and collaboratively with water owners to do things that have multiple benefits. Next slide, please. So St. Vrain Left Hand Water Conservancy District, as I said earlier, is a taxing authority. We are one of the smallest. If you look at your tax bill, it's an order of largest to smallest, and we're typically hovering around the camp at the bottom of the tax bill. That's an example of the assessed values and the annual tax that we collect and prorated out per month. Next slide, please. We have a board of directors, and I want to emphasize this partly because Kurt's here and he's my boss, but secondly because they are a unique set of board of directors. We have 9 board of directors. The way that the act reads, and it was again very intentional by the state legislature, they did not want water to become a political animal. They did not want it to be Republican and Democrat. They did not want people campaigning on water issues. They knew water was critical to Colorado's economy. They knew water was critical to Colorado's ecosystem, and they did not want water to be a political animal. So sorry about that. So they said, we are going to allow district judges to be able to appoint the board of directors. There's also no term limits. They do have terms, and the legislature recognized that water is a lifelong journey, so they did not want folks being termed out. So I have 9 directors. They're scattered throughout all the basin, and we meet monthly and talk about a variety of water issues, and they were the ones that said we do want to venture forward with the stream management plan. They're the ones that are saying we do want to provide additional services to the community, and part of our outreach and letting folks know that we're here and we'd like to continue to partner is a product of coming here and sharing this with you. I believe that's the last slide. Questions? You want to talk coffin top, don't you?
Trustee Browning.
Laverne couldn't be here, so. Question. You said you still have an active water right relating to Coffin Top. Is that a right to impound the South St. Vrain What can you do with it?
Yeah. So the question was, is it the water right that's still alive? Is it a right to impound, and what can you do with that water right? So the decree that exists today that's still alive says we will build a reservoir and impound water at that location. What we're engaging the community on is, can we take this water right and carve it up and put it in different locations? So Lake 4 gravel pit, for example, is a potential where we could say, is there room in Lake 4? Could we put some of that coffin top water in there and provide that for other uses? For example, the coffin top water right does have a recreation right associated with it, which is fairly unique for a 1970s, 1960s water right. We could, in theory, store it in Lake 4 and then release that for recreation opportunities as a potential. As I said, we engaged in that conversation prior to the flood. There were a lot of interest around it from the Trout Unlimited folks, fishermen in this area, as well as others. And again, the flood sort of distracted those conversations.
Thank you.
Other questions? Could you talk a little bit more about how this water could be potentially used to create better fish habitat in the St. Vrain?
By this water, you mean coffin top or just water in general?
Well, in general, how could a program like this improve that quality?
Yeah, so I'll focus on the stream management plan. So the way that we've looked at the stream management plan is we've hired scientists, excuse me, we've hired scientists to look at a variety of different reaches throughout the watershed. We have a 300,000 acre watershed. In the stream management plan, we had $300,000. So not a lot there to be able to do work with, but we worked with the community to target certain areas and set some priorities as to where we want to look at potential projects. We surveyed the fishing community and asked them, where is good fishing, where is fishing not so great, and if it's not so great, is it flow related or is it something else? And through that survey information, as well as what the scientists went out and looked at, is we did identify some areas within the watershed that could benefit from additional flow. What we don't yet know is how much flow. We can do some very simple. Wintertime is obviously an area that could use flow improvement, and we do have programs under previous regimes where we're able to provide wintertime flow through Lions. So we could expand on that as an example. What we talked to the consultants, in fact, today about is perhaps we need to write it up in such a way where we're, whether it's adaptive management or learning by doing, we know this will provide good results. We don't quite know how much we need to dial it in. So could we provide some water and then analyze it, as opposed to spending all the money up front to analyze that? And we're just now scratching the surface of that conversation.
One of the other issues we're looking at is fish passage. It's hard to say every once in a while. There you go. So that's something that's been important to the Ecology Board. That's something else that's been mentioned in the stream management plan, is to look at the fish passage in this reach, especially between here and Longmont, because there's a lot of habitat value there. And it gets a little bit carved up because of agriculture and some of the diversion structures, and then it compounds itself a little bit because of some of the flood issues that happened and how it was rebuilt. Some of the stuff, Highland Dam, for example, could have been done better. So we're talking about that and potentially coming back to retrofit some of that stuff in the future. And I think that is a key for this management plan too, is to look at some of the deficiencies, some of the things that had to happen because of timing, make sure we can make it better to the extent that we can. But I'm very excited. I think Sean's an awesome, he's got an awesome vision, and we've also, shared a lot of things. And one of the things when I applied to be on the board was looking at the recreational aspect as well as the agricultural aspect, because I've got deep agricultural roots as well. But I think there's things that we can do with automation on some of the gates that can really create a more consistent flow. And I think there's a lot of really good things going for us. And so share a lot of the same goals with the Ecology Board, working with the schools to do some of the testing. And I think with Left Hand Water Center and Jessica Olson. And so
point that out. Actually, just to take one more minute of your time with the connection with the schools in the watershed district. After the devastating flood, it morphed, the Town of Lyons Tree Board morphed into the Ecology Advisory Board. We wrote a Sustainable River Corridor Action Plan, which helped us vet a lot of the contractors that were coming in and working in our community with a like-mindedness for river restoration. And from that, water sampling started to happen with elementary school and students in the middle school and high school. And in the last, just to connect a few dots, over the last few years, a benefit of the flood is the engagement of our youth in our community, and the principals at the two schools have established a feeder school program, trying to make Lyons like a natural resource IB program, if for lack of a better term. And they have quite an idea of what youth can do from K through 12, wildlife management for kindergartners, urban wildlife, raising chickens, butterfly release, bird adaptation, willow planting, microinvertebrate study, geomorphology and photography, trout hatchery. So there's been a really interesting spin from this watershed concept to making Lyons Elementary School, high school, a natural resource magnet school. And there's a lot more detail on that, but I'll turn the microphone back over to you, Sean.
Yeah, just one final question for you is what can Lyons do to partner with you on some of these plans?
Awesome question. So many of you know Jim Blankenship unfortunately passed away, and Jim was really active in the St. Vrain Creek Coalition as well as the stream management plan process. So to the extent that there's some resources available in Lyons to be able to engage and be sort of a point of contact, that would be wonderful. We're also looking at phase 2 of this process, and I've gone on record as many times saying I hate phase projects, but given the scope of what we were trying to pull off here, it seemed logical to really phase this in and see if there was interest beyond phase 1. If the community is interested in seeing phase 2, we'll be looking for funds. So that would be another way that Lyons could engage and really help out this process.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, we're not taking audience questions right now, but maybe you can catch them afterward. And just,
If I can get out.
Laverne, if you're watching, no one's building a coffin top dam. We are not going to build a dam. Okay, thank you very much for being here and for the presentation. It was really helpful. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So will the clerk please read the items on consent into the record, please?
Resolution 2019-119, a resolution approving a second amendment to the construction agreement with CGRS Incorporated for the Eastern Corridor Utilities. Number 2 is Resolution 2019-110, a resolution awarding the proposal for St. Vrain Creek Recovery Project RFQ 19 SVCR01 to Anderson Consulting Engineers Incorporated and approving a professional services agreement. Resolution 2019-108, a resolution awarding the proposal for the 2019 paving capital assessment plan to Capital Assessed and Pavement Services and approving a professional services agreement with Capital Asset and Pavement Services. Brandon's going to have to do something to make these shorter, these titles. Also have first reading for Ordinance 1067, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Section 13-3-90C of the Lyons Municipal Code related to water taps for residential fire suppression systems. Resolution 2019-11, a resolution of the Town of Lyons accepting transfer of deed of the Martin parcel from the Boulder County to the Town of Lyons. Resolution 2019-109, a resolution in support of Proposition CC on the November 5, 2019 statewide election ballot, a measure to allow the state to invest revenue collected beyond the current state limits for state and local transportation projects, as well as K-12 education and higher education. Resolution 2019-104, a resolution approving the Fourth Amendment of the Disaster Recovery Services Agreement with OTAC/Loris and Associates for Second Avenue Bridge project design. This one was continued from the October 7th meeting. Resolution 2009-112, a resolution approving the Fifth Amendment to the Disaster Recovery Services Agreement with OTAC Loris and Associates for the Second Avenue Bridge project design. Resolution 2019-113, a resolution approving the Fourth Amendment of the Professional Services Agreement with Colorado Civil Group for the Public Works Building Site Project. Resolution 2019-114, a resolution authorizing the Sixth Amendment to the Disaster Recovery Services Agreement between the town and DHM Corporation for additional services for Phase 2 of Bowen Park reconstruction. Resolution 2019-115, a resolution approving the First Amendment of a professional services agreement with Enline Electric. Resolution 2019-116, a resolution determining that accounting services during the initial months of flood recovery provided by Betty Simpson were reasonable and necessary. Resolution 2019-117, a resolution determining that procurement of asphalt materials used to fill damaged roads provided by Brannan Sand and Gravel were reasonable and necessary. Resolution 2019-118, a resolution determining that flood response and recovery for temporary roofing repairs and preservation of the historical Lions Depot building performed and provided by Boulder Roofing were reasonable and necessary. The Lyons Regional Library District report to the town of Lyons in Larimer County, the October accounts payable, and the October 7th, 2019 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Yes, we can say flood recovery is still going strong.
Yes, it is. Would anyone like to pull any items from consent? Trustee Farrell?
Number 5, please.
Anyone else? Trustee Browning? That was mine too. Wow, we're all on the same page tonight. Anything else? Oh, that's it. All right. But before anybody changes their mind, is there a motion to approve the remaining items on consent?
I move to approve items on consent except number 5.
Is there a
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All right. And the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is a presentation regarding the pay-as-you-throw single hauler program. So we're ready for that presentation. And then after the presentation, the board can ask questions, and then we'll take public input.
Anyone else who wants to speak on behalf of Civic Works?
Just let me know. Maybe turn your microphone.
Just push the middle.
All right, and if you all can just introduce yourselves, then you have the floor. Thank you.
Sure. Introduce yourself.
Dan Mates, Chair of the Sustainable Futures Commission and 219 Park Street resident.
My name's Garrett McDaniel. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the Town of Lyons. So I'll get this presentation kicked off. So we presented, I did not present, I've been here, just so everybody knows, I've been here for 6 months, started in April. Toby had run this program for a year, so we are revisiting this. We went out to an RFP earlier this year. The board elected to move forward with an RFP, so that's what we've done the past couple of months. We received 2 responses, one from Western, another from One Way, and that's what we're here to talk about. Cool. So we have an environmental sustainability plan, and the pay-as-you-throw is a clear beneficiary of that plan. Some of our waste goals are reducing the amount of solid waste sent to landfills, support recycling and composting program, and striving towards zero waste and managing resources responsibly and effectively. Next slide, please.
So just to very quickly review, in case not all of folks are familiar with pay-as-you-throw in a single hauler contract, Pay-as-you-throw is a model by which you pay incrementally according to how much trash you generate. So if you have a 64-gallon can, you pay twice as much as if you had a 32-gallon can. And then typically with pay-as-you-throw, other services are added on to that, such as recycling and composting. There may or may not be a fee for recycling or composting. The ideal is that there is not, so it really incentivizes minimizing trash and maximizing recycling and composting. So pay-as-you-throw is after single stream, in which you can put everything in one bin. Pay-as-you-throw is the single biggest diversion tactic that a community can take. It'll jump up your diversion as community diversion from the landfill for something like 10% is what's typical. It is something that pay-as-you-throw has been adopted by a lot of communities in our area, including Lafayette, Louisville, Boulder, Longmont, Golden, and I believe Arvada is voting tonight to enter into a contract negotiation for a single hauler contract. So the single hauler aspect of it is that we as a community contract with one entity to haul all three materials from everywhere all the residential sources, all the houses in the community. I also work for EcoCycle, so I'm in this industry. It's my personal belief that this is our one chance to get community-wide curbside recycling and composting, because we're a little town. We're a long ways from the recycling center. We're a long ways from composting. If we don't have the ability to award this to one hauler, it's probably not going to happen or anywhere near the rates that we're likely to get out of this contract. Challenges. I'll mention that it's also more convenient personally, that you can, we obviously we have a recycling center, but it's, this is at your curb, and we don't have any composting available curbside in the town. Challenges are that, so this is a loss of personal choice. However, it is not a loss of choice for the community. These contracts go for a limited time, and they get robust interest from haulers. The other challenge is that it does involve some Town of Lyons administration to basically the main function is to do the billing, take the information from the hauler and turn that into the utility bill.
Next slide.
So this was a slide that, yeah, you want to talk about
that? EcoCycle just last year, as part of our Green Star Community grant with the EPA, we conducted a survey. That's almost 200 homes represented there, so that's about a quarter, almost, of our community. 75% said they were strongly in favor of pursuing a single hauler contract.
Next slide.
All right, so we tried to do some cost comparisons between One-Way and Western. There are a lot of variables with these bids. When you're talking about different size trash containers, different size compost containers, whether you want weekly pickup or every other week pickup, it can get pretty confusing pretty quickly. So when we compare the maximum services we can, meaning we can get trash, recycling, and compost. We could expect to pay those smaller rates at the bottom of those slides. That's including a 32-gallon compost bin and trash bin with a 96-gallon recycling bin. Next slide.
Okay, another couple of things to note. One, cost of recycling. You may be aware that the recycling industry is going through a tough time right now, mostly to China closing its doors as a recipient of our recyclables. As a result, the Boulder County Recycling Center, where all of our material goes in this county, has had to charge a tip fee to haulers to cover that gap between usually recyclables are a revenue source. Right now they're a cost. We don't expect this to last for a long time, but it's we're in uncharted waters, I have to say. However, the expectation is that since China has shut down, the mills that we used to send materials to they'll take a couple years probably to ramp back up. We are seeing, we think the markets are hitting the bottom and starting to climb now. So at any rate, there is this is a wrinkle for the pay-as-you-throw concept. So rather than trying to wedge it into the pay-as-you-throw model, what we have with the RFP is that we will set the recycling fee aside and charge that to the households. It amounts to if you make I've made some assumptions on that how much recyclables we generate. It's something in the order of $1.50, $1.60 per household per month right now. So the question, there is a question here, should the town take responsibility for administering that fee, or would we prefer the hauler to do that? One hauler gave us options, Western gave us options. One way assumed that the town would do that. The other, another little tidbit is the second bullet, composting concerns. There is only one transfer station for compost in Boulder County right now, and that is owned by Western Disposal. It is, and there also is a quarantine on yard waste leaving the county right now because of emerald ash borer. So the assumption that One Way made in their bid was that they would be taking their compostables to the transfer station at Western without understanding that Western was exercising their prerogative as a competitor to not allow that. So as it stands right now, the state has found emerald ash borer outside of Boulder County. Garrett's latest information from the state is that they expect that to extend the quarantine to the entire state now, which would allow the opportunity for One Way to haul to another location. However, it's not in their bid right now. And you're talking about bins?
Yes. So part of the bids, so One Way, rather Western does not allow the town to own our trash bins. They recommended not doing so, and thus they did not provide an option for that, where One Way did provide that option. I've talked to communities like Lafayette and Golden who who have made the initial investment of owning their bins, and it's not cheap. It'd be 10 to 15K for the town of Lyons to buy bins, and then there's also administration costs with tracking bins per household. You'd probably have to put some serial numbers on them. So there's definitely some staff time that would be made to manage that whole bit. The next item is the bear-proof concerns. So both One Way and Western have provided opportunities for bear-proof bins. I know that's just been a discussion in recent months here in the town of Lyons. So I wanted you to make you aware of that as well. Next slide. I will talk briefly on this, and I'll turn it over to Brandon. So Golden and Lafayette, when they implemented their pay-as-you-throw programs, they did not include their HOAs. One good reason for that is they have, based on economies of scale, they have a large percentage of residential homes. So a pay-as-you-throw program could work without HOAs. In Lyons' case, this program would not work without HOAs included. HOAs, I think I've got it in here, are close to 200 homes. So that's a decent percentage of our economy. So with that out of scope, we would be looking at increased prices for sure.
Yeah, and just address the statutory concern. As we've discussed many times, this process of a single hauler program is tightly controlled by the state statute. And if you look at the definition of what basically you're allowed to do this for, is for residential waste services, which excludes industrial, commercial, and then multifamily residences of 8 or more units. So if you read that pretty plainly as it's shown, there is no exception for HOAs in statute. But as Garrett has mentioned, some communities have decided to exempt HOAs from their single hauler programs for various reasons. So there is no legal problem with including or not including HOAs. I just wanted to show you the statutory language there.
Next slide. So in summary, the pay-as-you-throw program will increase diversion rates. Toby presented the data in March of this year. So if you're interested in the data, it was an EPA report. I can provide that to you. Just send me an email. And then, as Dan was talking about, pay-as-you-throw provides curbside collection for trash, recycling, and compost for everyone. It's also more convenient for residents, having that ability to put trash out and get it picked up. A reduction of trucks. I think both One Way and Western said that they could provide hauling 2 days a week. So that also means less bins out there for bears to get into or what have you. So average cost to subscribers would likely be lower based on the research that I've done. And then there is no upfront cost to the city, to the town. One Way and Western, we've talked about, where do questions come up, and so, we'd like to steer those questions about their waste services to those companies. So there's little staff impacts from a town perspective. As I talked about, bear-proof bins could be provided for a small fee. And then there are some challenges, like any new change or a new process, we would have to get a billing process set up so that trash gets incorporated with the utility bills, so that our residents aren't having to pay two separate bills. The highest trash generators pay slightly more, and slightly more. It's a lot more. For those 96-gallon trash bins, it's quite expensive. And as Dan mentioned, it's a loss of choice, but we are making this a competitive and objective process. So, we don't expect to have this perceived loss of competition. That's it.
All right. All right, thank you very much. We'll open it up to the board for any questions. Mayor Pro Tem.
I had one kind of specific question related to the bag program. The statement in the bid from Western seemed to be a little ambiguous when they said those who have can be grandfathered in, and I didn't know whether that was if the person had a bag program with any, or was it only with Western? Could you clarify that?
Yeah, and so this has been a big concern for us, is how do we manage the bag program? So yes, if you have whether it's one way or Western, you would be grandfathered in to your bag program and excluded from the pay-as-you-throw program.
Trustee Browning.
And to follow up on Trustee Drostad's question, so people, whether they're customers of Western or One Way now who have bags, they're going to be grandfathered. How would the provider go about verifying who is grandfathered in now and who isn't? How would you prove that you're an existing bag customer if one company gets the bid and you're a bag customer of the other company?
That specifically has not been discussed, but we would need to work out a way to figure out, who has been receiving bags and that sort of thing.
Okay. And where would those people who are grandfathered in, where would they actually buy their bags from? Would it be from the town, from the hauler? How would that system work?
Yeah, so I know the city of Lafayette, they issue the bags themselves, but we have not decided what is the best solution for the town. My opinion is something that the town could probably take on, but we haven't talked about that as from a staff perspective.
Okay. And I guess what would prevent someone from trying to reduce their monthly charges by buying bags is if you buy more than a bag per week, you're actually paying more than you would for a 32-gallon can. Is that the theory?
Yeah, and that's something that we can control. If the town is the one selling bags, we would be able to, figure out what that cost of that bag would be for that resident, so that they're not sort of, playing the game of trying to get away from their trash bin.
Okay. You mentioned kind of in passing something like a potential $1.50 per household recycle fee. Could you kind of go into that a little bit more and explain, is that in addition to the charges we're seeing in the proposals from Western and One Way, or is it built into those charges? Kind of explain what the background of that is, because that wasn't clear.
Yeah, so One Way's bid has the recycling tipping fees included into the costs of the pay-as-you-throw program. Western has produced two bids. One, they would be absorbing the cost, and two, or the town of Lyons would be, issuing that cost.
Okay. So is that reflected in Western's bid when they're saying whether we own the recycling or not? I saw that price difference. Is that what's reflected there? That if Western owns the recycling, then they will be charging a higher cost. But if the town owns the recycling, Western charges a lower cost. And is that basically the pass-through fee that you're talking about here?
Correct. And at the base rate, it's something like a $3 difference, which I think is reasonable for covering that cost, and then some administrative costs as well. So I think either way, that's about what you're looking at probably.
And then a question for Brandon, I guess, about the HOAs. As far as I've been able to gather, there's really only one HOA in town that actually contracts for trash hauling service on behalf of its residents, and that's the one in Stone Canyon. And there's an existing contract between Stone Canyon and Western, as I believe they're contracted hauler. Are there any legal issues for the town if this was adopted and made effective before the end of that contract period? Or is the HOA's, Stone Canyon HOA's contract with Western basically subject to town ordinance, which is done pursuant to authority granted by state law?
I think it's an issue that I have not considered to date, but something I think we should look into more. My gut feeling is that, that contract is subject to our validly passed ordinances pursuant to police powers. But of course, something like that, you're always worried about an interference with contract claim. But, typically, validly enacted ordinances pursuant to police powers could supersede those contractual rights. So something I think we need to do more research on, but it's a good question to look into.
Thank you.
Any questions from staff? I'm sorry, did you have other questions? I didn't see any lights, so. Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a question for staff.
Okay.
And that relates to the administration question. What's your perception of the impact of administration of billing process to the town staff?
I can speak to that.
I spoke with Dolores and the front staff. So it's an automated process where the trash companies would send a CSV file, which would be automatically updated into the billing system. So sure, it'll take a little bit to get that process up and running, but once it's in place, it really shouldn't take more than 15 minutes of maybe mocking up the Excel document.
Is that it? Good for your question? Okay, Trustee Farrell.
So I'm going to get a little bit more specific because I still am not sure I quite understand the $1.50. So I'm looking at the the proposal page, kind of your summary that you gave out, and when you put cost $18 a month for Western, 32-gallon trash, 32-gallon compost, 96-gallon recycle, the $1.50 is not. Tipping is not included in that $18, but it is in the $23.60 a month for one way. I guess I kind of really want to nail down where that cost is being added on, or for Western.
So that $18, that includes the cost of recycling. That includes the tipping fee. And that's saying that the contractor owns the tipping fees. So they will pay the $13,000 estimated of that tipping fee. If the town takes on the tipping fee, we would have to pay the 13 grand. So that rate would be reduced to $17.35.
I'm with you now.
Okay.
Okay.
So it would be cheaper. It's the same. It's just two ways of looking at it.
Okay, but in terms of the quote you're giving us, that money, that is included.
Yeah.
So somebody's not going to be able to say, oh, and it's going to cost me another $1.50. Okay.
Yep.
But it's not included in one.
But it's not included with one way.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay.
It doesn't say it, but.
And I'd kind of like to understand a little bit because on, really what you've quoted here is that the compost would be every other week, and that's for this $18 a month cost Western, $23.60 one way. So has anybody had composting in the garage in a bucket for 2 weeks? I just know what my trash smells like, and so I'm a little concerned about what that would be. And I saw that One Way offers weekly for composting, but no, Western offered weekly, One Way did not. So if One Way really, though, came out on top for people, could that possibly be something they would negotiate?
So it's my understanding that One Way cannot provide weekly recycling and weekly composting.
Okay.
Western can
Western can,
do that, yes.
mainly because it's at their own facility.
I think it's
least
just
the compost.
it's just the trucks. It's just getting the trucks to Lyons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, and then going back to the bags question again, the grandfathered. So if I were somebody that just suddenly decided I really want to start using bags, but I don't currently, that's not an option available to me.
It wouldn't, because this whole pay-as-you-throw program is based on economies of scale. So if we allowed that to happen, that economies of scale goes down, therefore prices go up.
And did I read somewhere, I think, that there are 12 households in all of Lyons that use bags?
That's proprietary information
Okay.
that we don't have. So that's just an estimate from the community, from the SFC.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Trustee Caravas.
You're mentioning and the benefits of, of diverting more and more, and I'd like to think Lyons is pretty much, we got a lot of people doing a lot more than a lot of other people in communities in other states. So to justify doing this, what is Lyons sending to the landfill now? What is our yearly tonnage or our monthly tonnage? Do we have that? Do the people in the room have knowledge of that? And what is the goal to get it down to?
Yeah, we have that information. I didn't prepare that information for today. That was presented in March of where we are now and where we expect to be with the pay-as-you-throw program, and I can certainly get you that information.
Do you just off the top of your head, since you already have that information, where do we where's Lyons stand now compared to comparable cities our size in Colorado, and then in general, with Colorado in general?
Well, the reported rate is 39%, which, but if you look at the reports, there's almost zero trash from the commercial sector for whatever reason. So that's inflated. So the fact is, we don't really know what our recycling rate. I can tell you that in my experience, you don't exceed 30% without a comprehensive curbside program.
What's going to happen staff-wise, say this goes through and everybody wants to do, and we go through something like this? Well, is there a need for our recycling center out there?
You want to answer?
Well, it's the county, it's the county's recycling center, and they would like to keep it. Obviously the town can weigh in on that, but the county's perspective is that the outlying communities that won't be able to participate in this would appreciate the ability to recycle as they come through town.
And it gets pretty messy. We have to clean it up. A bunch of stuff was just dumped there in the last week or so that has to get thrown in the trash by town staff. Is Boulder County, do they offset us on that? More stuff comes down from the mountains from other people? Is that?
Yeah, I think that that is entirely worth renegotiating with the county myself.
Okay. And to reconfirm, businesses are exempt from this, obviously. It's just residential. Things are changing with technology. People work out of their homes. Businesses their homes are deducted on their taxes because IRS. How does that play into this legal side of things? Is that someone's going to bring it up if we pass it? If we do something like this, it's going to get asked or get questioned. So
I mean, the statute says commercial entities. I think an STR, for example, which I think is kind of what you're getting at, people renting out their homes on a short-term basis.
Actually, I was thinking about selling manufacturers stuff they sell. Local art places in their own home, their photography shop, and they use their garage, they use their basement. IRS allows them to write off,
Yeah, that too as well, in-home businesses.
Yeah.
I still think that's a residential use. That's how they're zoned, and therefore this would apply to them.
Okay. That's all for now.
Did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Just one thing, if we do decide to move forward with this, there does need to be some clarification in One Way's bid. There was some late communication last week prior to, making anything public. We just didn't have a chance to clarify some of the numbers on One Way's bid. For example, it says added costs for composting services on their pricing sheet. One Way submitted that thinking that the composting service was voluntary instead of mandatory. So therefore, that price that she listed is way higher than what it actually is. So there's two things that we need to clear up with One Way.
Okay, thank you. I just had one question, a little bit of a follow-up tied to what Trustee Karavis was asking. Do we know from the communities that have implemented these programs, have they successfully reduced their diversion?
Yes, but I don't have that data in front of me.
Okay. I'd be interested in just if they can share any of their performance with us.
I can get that for you.
That would be very helpful. Thanks. Other questions? Okay.
I want to follow up with Trustee Bryan's question concerning the interference with the contract potentially claim. I didn't think of it at first, but tortious interference with the contract would be precluded by the Governmental Immunity Act. So it seems unlikely that an ordinance that would interfere with the contract, I guess, on its face would be a basis for liability for the town.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and start the public input period. I believe staff has a sign-up sheet, so if you could come forward, give your name and address for the record. And how many do we have signed up?
Currently, there's 8.
Okay, we'll go 3 minutes per person. I'm assuming we may have some that didn't sign up in advance, so I want to make sure everybody has opportunity to speak. So if you want to go ahead and start calling the names.
Mr. Goranson?
If you don't mind pushing the middle button. Oh, I should move that.
Want to know why we want to screw with something that works for everybody.
Could you give your name and address for the record first, please?
Al Goranson,
Thank you. And your address?
1034 Fifth.
Thank you.
To start with, if you do it by quantity, people with a lot of kids and stuff, they're going to pay more than 1 or 2 people. And if I got a trash hauler that I don't like or charges too damn much, I can change trash haulers. If they all charge too much, I can haul my own damn trash. The town ain't involved. So why in the world would we change it? I want to know. This is silly. I don't know what the benefit is. To start with, he can't really give us a definitive price on what it's going to cost us. When he does, they're going to have to add something on because they're going to handle the bill. And in my case, I got several rentals, so if they don't pay their damn trash bill, I got to pay it. And that's a bunch of crap. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Sorry, we don't, nope. If we have any outbursts, we'll have to end the public comment period. So if you could please refrain from any outbursts and we'll go ahead with the next person. Thank you.
Linda Pellin? Pacone? Did she leave? Tom Kramer?
Middle button, or is it on?
It's on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom Kramer, 407 Raymond Court. Am I allowed to ask questions of the sustainability?
You can ask questions, but we don't respond
Right,
at this
okay.
point. But
So just a couple of things, and thank you, by the way, for all the homework you've done, because you answered a few of my questions already, but it wasn't real clear on the container ownership as far as, I know some trash haulers will provide a rental option. By the way, I'm not in favor of that. I'm either in favor of the town providing it for the homeowner to buy, or it's included as part of the service, and you pay for the larger containers that will. But I didn't hear addressing whether any of the haulers, I know the two that you mentioned, or at least one of them, doesn't offer the automated curb pickup. It's done by manual haulers. A lot of them have to take two people to lift it because of heavy weight. And the only reason I mention that is that's caused damage to containers in the past. They'll heave it around and drop it, or it's not handled by an automated system. So just another thing to consider if they do offer that as one of their options. And then curbside composting, it sounds like you still need to work some things out with one way, but just as a point of reference, I compost my own, but on recycling, I pay an extra $5 a month for one way. And even with the rates, with the recycling included, still be about an 8% reduction. So I'm in favor of it. Just would like to work out some of those details as far as the ownership and how it's managed at the curbside. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Justin Spencer?
Hi folks, I'm Justin Spencer. I live at 234 Welch Drive. I'm here to speak out in favor of the proposed pay-as-you-throw program. I have a household of 5. We make a fair bit of waste. Much of that's recycling, but we still have to haul that on a regular basis ourselves. It's kind of a pain in the butt. And we also compost ourselves at home, some, but we could compost a lot more if we could have the industrial composting instead of my little backyard pile, which I'm honestly not very good at composting. You know, I'm not a pro. I'm a rank amateur at best. So yeah, I think that for those of us who currently have one can, don't pay for recycle, don't pay for composting, we're going to save some money, and it's going to be way easier. And we're going to actually achieve some of our sustainability goals. So I'm all in favor, and I encourage you to adopt this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Next would be Charles Olson.
Hi, Charles Olson, 102 Eagle Canyon. Just want to plead with the board not to take control of our trash services. Over the past several years, I've seen a lot of my town-managed utilities go up, including our stormwater fees, soon to be our water fees and our electric fees. You guys taking control of our trash service will put an undue hardship on my family. We presently pay one-way $32 each month for 96-gallon trash and 64-gallon recycling. This is picked up weekly. Under the single hauler model, a 96-gallon trash can plus recycling would raise my rates to $44 a month. That's with Western, or $66 a month with one way. And this is for biweekly recycling with an additional trash and prepaid bags at $7 each. So that amounts to $144 additional per year with Western for the same service that I receive now, or $408 with one way. I think you guys are looking at this from a narrow lens. For families producing more than 32 gallons of trash each week, they will pay more. Thank you.
Thank you. That's your last warning. Last time. Next time, we will have to end it. Thank you. Who's up next? No
John
clapping.
Hunter.
No clapping, no yelling, no responding. Thank you.
John Hunter, 305 McConnell Drive. Promise not to make anybody clap. I would echo everything that Mr. Olson just said and Mr. Goranson said prior to him. I'm strongly against this. I live at 305 McConnell Drive, by the way. Sorry if I didn't put that in there. This isn't scientific study, but everybody that I've spoken to in my neighborhood is against this. I know there's probably one person I didn't speak to that I know would be in favor of it. But anecdotally, there's strong opposition to this, and a lot of folks feel like the town has really no business being involved in this, and even if it's an altruistic goal, at the end of the day, people like being able to make their own decisions, and if they choose to support composting, then that's a personal decision and not one the government should shove down their throat. I've got, kids, and it is, based on the numbers I've seen, I can cram a lot of trash in that 96-gallon container, and sometimes I set an extra bag or two, and the good folks at One Way will pick it up, and I don't get charged, and we've had the same trash guy for years, and we give him a Christmas bonus, and he's been good to us. If you guys go with Western, which looks like that may be the direction it would go based on the bids, then it's going to hurt a local company that's been doing work around here for a long time and that employs people. So I don't support that. I do think that I haven't seen the town, in my perspective, consistently demonstrate the ability to effectively manage things, and I do see costs going up a lot. And I think there's going to be an administrative cost that's not being factored in to this from the town in terms of staff hours. I hear the town's already overworked. You hear that all the time. The town employs more people than, in my knowledge, that it ever has, and I see that as continuing to head in the wrong direction, which is going to cost us ultimately as taxpayers. And just to sum up, in my experience, less competition has never been better for consumers, based on my personal experience. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Peter Nagy.
Hi, I'm Pete Nagy of 209 Welch Court. I am all for pay-as-you-throw as a concept. I thank you for all that you've done. I don't think this is quite working out, though. I don't think that's really what this is. Also, I have a number of concerns about what has been claimed as benefits. For example, reduction of trucks. Right now, Western has more than one truck servicing different parts of town. I mean, it sounds like you go with one server, then you have one instead of 3 haulers. So you've reduced your trucks down to 1/3. That's the misconception that's here. Really, these trucks are hauling. If Western has to increase the number of routes that they do, it means that they have more than one full truck. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. So it doesn't really reduce trucks. It's going to be increasing trucks because now the trucks have to haul more stuff, like compost. Composting, where I live, I've got 8 giant cottonwoods and 2 big ashes and huge elm and 10 fruit trees. I've got one of the bigger lots in town. I compost all of my yard waste and all my food scraps. I take my compost out every morning. I don't want it sitting in a container for a week. It's great. It's great for the garden. It's not going to be a benefit to be paying for someone to haul my compost. As far as recycling, it's really not that big of an issue for me to go and take recycling somewhere as I'm making a trip somewhere else. So really, what I have right now is $6 a bag for Western, and I spend $15 a month, $12 a month maybe, with the service that I have now, which is already pay as you throw. I've got pay as you throw. So this, one of the falsehoods is we're going to have pay as you throw and it's going to cost less. It's not going to cost less. I would have been one of those who answered to that EcoCycle survey. I'm all for pay as you throw if it reduces costs. That's the question. That's not what it's doing. It's increasing costs for people with lots of trash. It's increasing costs for people with not much trash, like me. So, so reduction of trucks, not a benefit. I don't buy that. It's not going to reduce trucks. Compost is not a benefit.
I'm sorry, that's the end of the time. Thank you very much. Your time is up. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Also, a lot more than 12 people have bag service, so if that's not factored in,
Thank you.
you need to factor that
Dave
in.
Hatchimanji?
Dave Hachimoji, 200 Welch Court. Dear mayors and trustees, as our elected officials, you are being asked to decide whether Lions should join hundreds of other communities across the country and require single hauler pay-as-you-throw. This decision, like most of those that you must make as trustees, have proponents such as myself, as well as opponents amongst our good neighbors and friends. As a proponent for single hauler pay-as-you-throw, beyond that, it is the correct, most cost-effective, and sustainable thing to do. I would like to point to the town's comprehensive plan and its environmental sustainability plan for guidance. In the 2010 comp plan under environmental sustainability, the town has committed to, and I quote, facilitate residents and businesses' efforts to provide a net environmental benefit from their activities and operations through incentivization, recognition, and education. Put more simply, in the waste section of the Environmental Sustainability Plan, it states that the number one goal of this section is to reduce the amount of solid waste sent to landfills. Adopting a single hauler pay-as-you-throw ordinance is the only way for the town to meet these promises. The current anything goes policy with a mishmash of haulers offering limited waste diversion service plainly doesn't address this commitment, and it is time we fess up to this fact. I'd like to close by saying last month, youth in Colorado and around the globe came together to demand that we adults take responsibility for our maltreatment of this planet, which will soon be passing on to them. They rightly so question whether our values are more aligned with their futures or with staying on the destructive path of the status quo. Speaking to you as a citizen, please honor these young people by showing the courage and resolve to actively address on all fronts the climate crisis we've put them in. Pay-as-you-throw needs to be that first step. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, anybody else who did not sign up that would like to come forward? Here and then over here. Or either way, whichever way you want to go.
Dan Greenberg, 827 3rd Avenue. The main argument I've heard in opposition to how people, to pay-as-you-throw and how people perceive this impacting them negatively is it's personal. We've heard my rates will go up, or specifically it impacts my rental business, or something specific about them personally. But this shouldn't be a head count on how many people show up and say, well, my rate goes up this much, my rates go down this much, and you amortize it all out and you figure out, is it positive or negative. That's not how you make this decision. The way you make this decision is, does this reduce our impact on landfill? Because there's going to be people whose rates go down, and there's going to be people whose rates go up. There's going to be people who are inconvenienced, and there's going to be people who are more convenienced. And so you can't just do a head count to try to decide. Having yard waste go to a landfill is one of the biggest issues that we face. It's really bad to haul it out of town. It's bad to put in a landfill, and that's currently what's happening unless someone like myself fills up a trailer and then hauls it to Longmont and pays $35 to Longmont. You can haul it up to Allen's Park for free, but then you end up going all the way up there. So there's costs everywhere you go, and not everyone has a half-acre lot to do all the composting that we heard about. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is this. People who are saying that they're recycling on their own are not. I'm paying for them to recycle. You're paying for them to recycle, and every single person behind me is paying for people to bring recycling to the recycling center. We're subsidizing the fact that they don't have to put it out on the curb. So I pay for curbside recycling, and I also pay for other people to recycle at the recycling center, because we all pay for that. So I think people who are doing that and using the bag program and then claiming that, well, look, I only put one bag out, that's really not accurate. What they're doing is putting one bag of rubbish out for the landfill, and we're all paying for them to be able to recycle. And I think they should incur the actual cost of how they're disposing of their waste. And utilities have not gone up because the town has mismanaged utilities. That's just the way it is. And anyone who has followed utility rates in this town knows that. My bill's gone up. It's not because the town's mismanaged it. It's because utilities cost more. And the town has to, by law, break even. And that's all it's doing. Thank you.
Next.
Amber Burton, 630 3rd Avenue. And I want to start out by letting you know I'm an introvert, so for me to get up here and speak to you is very disconcerting to me, and so I want you to know how much I really feel about this subject. Now, I have sent you all letters, and some of you sent very nice replies back and some not so nice, but that is beyond the point. Basically, what I boils down to is we have a free recycling center, and as far as I understand from you all, it's not going away. So we're trading free for what Charles Olson said, more expense in his. I haven't knocked down the numbers, so I can't say my own family. And basically, according to the Redstone Review, there are two biggest drivers for the single haul pay-as-you-throw program, and one is to stop things from going to landfill, and the other one is to reduce costs for residents. Well, 50% of that doesn't sound all that great to me. You guys, as Board of Trustees, your job is to look out for us. Not that you get some feather in your cap that, ooh, look, we put this together in our town. Aren't we neat? So basically what I'm saying is you guys need to look out for us. And I'm sorry that our non-traditional water sewage plant failed. That is not our fault, although we are going to have to pay for each and every member of the residents of the town. And I realize that's one of the driving forces for why we want to have the composting added to it. Basically, I listened to all of the pre-bid meeting and listened to both Western and One Way, and neither one of them were excited about doing this. They said flat out in there, and you guys can look it up if you want, that the pay-as-you-throw model is dead. The one that used to be there. And why is that? Because nobody's taking our recycles anymore. Nobody's buying them. They're costing us. So, sorry, I'm trying to get myself. So, my concern is not just cost. My concern is it's not broken. We have a recycle center we can go to. Yes, it's convenient for a few more people, but honestly, it's there for us, and we should use it rather than go for this, what I see as something that's going to increase over time. If you guys are going to tell us that this isn't going to go up after we implement it, I don't know what they're giving you, 7 years, 3 years, whatever their contract is to you. It's going to go up. We know it's going to go up, so you can't promise us anything. Same article was saying how we're going to have our water and our waste go up. I don't see any end is near. And if you guys are talking about how Lions, you want to have low income and diversity for others, you got to start with basic utilities. They're out of control. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Come on up.
Aaron Kaplan, 1007 Steamboat Valley Road. So the starter would be, I just see it as sort of a non-starter. that to take on the staff aspect of it becomes quite a bit. I feel I know a little bit of what's going on with staff. We don't have a lot of staff, and that's the only aspect I would sort of speak to is if it takes any amount of staff, that becomes a little bit of an issue. I'll then take the rest of the time to say I'm surprised. I mean, not surprised, but there's all this tension from a lot of people, and I think it's good for us to be up here asking the question. I'm thankful for you guys to actually be looking at this. I think it's okay for us to talk about this and not have everyone come up. I understand you get up here, I'm a little bit shaky and nervous, and so we're all speaking that way, and it's not exactly how we are, but that we are here talking, and so there is some basis to the democratic aspect. You can weigh how many people said one thing and how many people said the other and think that that's the way they want to go. If people make the wrong decision, we're open to make the wrong decision. But I like that aspect that we can come up here and talk about it and give our own opinions, and you can try to weigh in on them. And again, I would say the biggest one, though, at this point in time is the staff aspect. If we look at how much staff we have, if it's going to take any staff, that really becomes a big problem. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else who didn't have an opportunity? Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate the input. From the staff's perspective, I didn't know if staff had any additional comments or
Any follow-up
questions.
you want from after hearing that?
Okay, our intent was, we're not making a decision on this tonight. This was intended to kind of hear the information, get some public input on the topic. My suggestion is we continue to have discussion on this and put it on a future agenda. Have some time to kind of digest the information and ask additional questions if we need to from the haulers to clarify some of the things that came up tonight. And we'll put it on the next agenda for more discussion and direction. Does that sound good? Mayor Pro Tem?
Of the questions that came up during, or comments that came up during the public input, I think between the notes that we have and being able to look at the recording, I think it would be helpful to get answers, probably, lump the questions that are similar and then, provide answers to people's concerns.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a recommendation from staff regarding the McIntosh Lake share. So I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. This was an item that the board has been wanting to get on our agenda. And so tonight we have a little time to start talking about the acceptance of the Lake McIntosh water shares. In addition to Colorado Big Thompson water shares for new development other than single-family residential that is not deed restricted. So I put together in your packet and in your report some of the language from the contract to try to clarify what that means. And tonight, really, I would like for the board to have some discussion about the McIntosh shares and then direct staff on what you would like us to bring forward as either new policies or procedures.
All right, any questions or comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
At least my thought is that before we implement this, we should have fairly clearly delineated process descriptions for example, how we would certify, maybe the right word, that.
I missed that word.
Certify?
Oh, certify, okay.
That something meets the definition of affordable housing or commercial development or economic development. So that, how does that occur? Is that is that a staff function that's assigned? Is there a committee? Is there a commission that should do that? Is there a recommendation to the Board of Trustees? I don't think we would want to make it highly bureaucratic, but at the same time, I think we would want it to be able to be documented as fair. If that makes sense.
I guess my understanding from reading this is that the affordable housing piece is pretty
Well-defined.
spelled out. It's pretty well defined. It's only for covenant and deed restricted properties for the affordable piece. So, I mean, I kind of read this as that that's the only type of residential development that can qualify for these shares. Is that your understanding as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's unclear. I'm just saying, who says, oh, yeah, that is?
Oh, okay.
And
So,
it shouldn't be a difficult process. I mean, they would look at the documentation associated with the development plan, and there would be some documentation that the decision was made that it is in fact affordable housing, and therefore qualifies for the McIntosh share. So that in the future, if people are looking back and questioning it, there's clear documentation. And, no question.
okay, thank you. Other thoughts or questions? Trustee Browning?
Yeah, my thoughts on this after we were presented with the amended IGA from Longmont on fairly short notice, and there were some reasons to expedite our decision on that. There were some more background facts that we really need to look into, and I mean the town, but also specifically the board. In particular, we need to look at the issue of annual assessments that the Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company can make. They've been fairly nominal in recent years, but if you look online about the history of Lake McIntosh, you'll see that for a long time there it's been recognized that they have a big siltation problem. Not surprisingly, it's fed by some ditches that drain agricultural lands, and it's gradually silting up. And the question that raised to me is, if 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there has to be a huge dredge and haul operation to make that lake function in the long term, and there's a huge assessment that goes out, is the town going to eat that cost? Or if the town allows developers to put up Lake McIntosh shares instead of far more expensive Colorado Big Thompson shares, is there some way that the town could require developers who were given the privilege, because it wouldn't be necessarily a right, to use Lake McIntosh shares to share those assessment costs? And so I think before we start drafting a policy, we need to make sure we understand what the potential costs associated with accepting Lake McIntosh shares are. I know that we pay assessments for the Colorado Big Thompson shares that the town owns, but that's not necessary. The analysis is not necessarily the same. If the Colorado Big Thompson share is worth $55,000 plus now, and a Lake McIntosh share is worth $7,000, it may make sense to pay a lot more of an assessment for your $55,000 asset than it would for your $7,000 asset. So I think we need to understand the whole assessment process. Closely related to that, we need to understand a little bit more than we've been told to date about how the Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company is actually operated. How does it determine when an assessment needs to be made and the amount of it? My understanding is that the operator of the reservoir is our good friend Highland Ditch Company. Mm-hmm. The town has had several dealings, I guess let's do it that way. It's a neutral term, with Highland Ditch Company. And I think we need to understand the governance structure for the Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company before we start drafting a policy. I have a question, too, a legal question that I would direct to the town attorney, as to whether we need to amend our existing code to even accept these. I believe that the relevant section of our code isn't real clear on this. It's actually the Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company. And I think, I meant to go back and grab the actual term. The actual term used in the code, it uses a particular term. It's not water supply company. I can go find it in a minute. But that's
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of discretion given in the water utilities section to basically interpret the code by the utilities director. But I think as a longer term solution, we probably would need to amend the code to make it more clear. And I think that's something the UEB could take on and look at as well. I know they have a lot on their plate. I'm looking at Trustee Caravas. But I think you're right that we probably would want to look at the code to make some changes if we wanted to do this.
And here's a very practical issue. I mean, and this is I'll also emphasize, this is an extremely important change in our policy of the town of Lyons to accept these shares. It could make or break commercial development or even affordable housing development on the Eastern Corridor. There are a whole lot of projects that at $55,000 the Colorado Big Thompson share just don't make economic sense, but might make sense for the equivalent of about $10,000 because I think it's 1.4 shares of Lake McIntosh equals the same acre footage as one Colorado Big Thompson share. So this could really have a beneficial effect if it's done right in the Eastern Corridor and the rest of town and downtown Lyons businesses as well. So it's something we need to think about, as Trustee Drosted already said, what procedures a potential developer would need to go through to know whether they would be able to use Lake McIntosh or Colorado Big Thompson shares. Just as an example, because it's the one that's most immediately forthcoming, if you think about the type of process that's going to be necessary for the Summit Housing to go forward and get staff review of their site plan and development plan, go to the PCDC, potential appeals to the Board of Trustees, that for a big project, and we're hoping to attract some big projects in the Eastern Corridor, can be a huge investment to go through that process. You got to hire the engineers up front. You got to hire the attorneys to navigate the process. You have to, if you're seeking grants or something, you have to pursue those. To ask a developer to do a major project that may only be feasible using Lake McIntosh shares, it's hard to ask them to get to the very end of what can be a 6-month, year-long process and cost them a lot of money and roll the dice on whether the Board of Trustees at the end of the process is going to say yes or no to using Lake McIntosh versus Colorado Big Thompson shares. So I think this policy needs to be carefully drafted in terms of how, if we're using it to spur development in the Eastern Corridor, which is our stated goal in our comp plan, how can a developer know up front, is this really going to be available to me or not, or do I have to assess my development based on using Colorado Big Thompson shares? So those are some of the major practical concerns. I also think process-wise, in terms of how we develop a policy, I, for one, am not sure that I just want to direct staff to go write us a policy or send us a draft policy. I think, at a minimum, some input is needed from the UEB because it affects our water situation, and input is needed from the PCDC because it affects our land planning. And I started thinking, what's the best way to do this? I'm not sure I have an answer for that. I don't know if it's a subcommittee of the board, perhaps a task force involving 1 or 2 board members plus a UEB representative and a PCDC representative, and also staff members, because you do need to pull expertise and research from a number of different sources. So that was kind of my initial focus, is how do we go about setting a policy? Because this is such an important thing. Do we just turn it over to staff and say, here's our concerns and please go draft us something? Or do we think about appointing some type of a task force that would have both board and commission, Board of Trustees, and staff involvement? And that would kind of be my preference, but maybe there are more efficient ways to do it. And those are my thoughts.
I have a question for staff. So is this what Longmont now accepts as a water share
Yes.
for new development?
They actually have a portfolio of about 12 different types of water shares they will accept. And Lake McIntosh, for my discussions with Dale Rademacher, the new deputy city manager, but who used to run Department of Utilities and Natural Resources. In talking with him, he explained to me that as long as the source is already connected to their system, 1 acre foot of water is 1 acre foot of water. And it doesn't matter to them where it comes from. Why make it, he said there's no wolf in sheep's clothing here. This is just, they want to help Lyons achieve our economic development and affordable housing goals. And in regard to governance, he did tell me that the majority of their board is of the McIntosh Water, the reservoir company, is the board is controlled by the city of Longmont, and they have no intent of giving that up. The assessments are $40 per share. I can sure follow up in regard to some of these projects you think might be coming and find out what their plans are for raising those assessments. Right now, we do pay a similar assessment to Colorado Big Tom, or to Northern Water. I think it's $42.50 a share that we pay every year as an assessment. So it's very similar. And right now, we pick that up through our operating budget in the water fund. So we just budget for that every year as we do anything else. We would still be getting the full water tap fee of the $17.5 unless the board chooses to change that. So the biggest difference would be that we would be able to accept this water for any development that you feel is supporting our goals. And I think, I guess you can look at it one of two ways. One being, this is our new standard water, unless you're not meeting our goals. And simplify it, because there are plenty of shares in the reservoir to meet our needs, according to Longmont. Or we look at it the opposite and continue down the path we are, which tends to make people angry at the cost of our water. So from their perspective, they said Lake McIntosh is an equivalent to CBT. They haven't bought CBT in decades.
So I guess my question, I was going to ask how much is the assessment? Do you know that? And
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful. I mean, my question is what's our main concern? Because I feel like any development that would, and I'm speaking mostly about the economic development
Yes.
primarily now, because I think the affordable housing is fairly cut and dry. If it's a covenant-controlled, deed-restricted affordable housing project,
It's eligible.
it's eligible always,
Yes.
pretty much. I mean, rather than have a process where, and I agree with a lot of the questions, I think Trustee Browning came up with good questions, and we should know the answers to those. And we should have certainty for developers coming in and looking at a project in Lyons and be able to say, my project should qualify for this. And why wouldn't we just make it that if your project gets through the development process, it qualifies? So it's really the development process that makes it eligible, because you could almost be like, everything is eligible as long as the project gets through the development plan process and the site and all of the reviews, because anything that's going to be substantial, more than one share, is probably going to require a special use review and all the development plan reviews that go in, especially anything out east, for sure. Any multifamily housing will require that process. So that's where we're going to have certainty that it meets our town goals from a development perspective. I mean, right, it's going to have to comply with the zone, it's going to have to comply with
this amount
LPPA and all the other.
Water, you
Yes.
meet these goals.
Exactly.
Otherwise you
So I'm
don't.
like, I don't think we have to overcomplicate this bureaucratically. I think we could look at it as, this is our water share for these types of developments, assuming you get through our site development
And
process.
if not, you pay the other amount.
I mean, I think it could literally be that simple.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not suggesting complexity.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting documentation. For example, at one time for liquor license or the special events, one of the statements on there was, does it need security or not? Well, to me, it's almost as simple as that. Does this qualify, and there's a check mark on the development proposal to the Board of Trustees, so that the PCDC and the staff reviewing the development process, that's one of the considerations. And if it meets the objectives that it's required to meet in order to get through the development process, that's just one of the check marks. So that there's documentation. So once again, it's not like 10 years from now, somebody's saying, well,
Why did they get that
why didn't,
water?
or why did they, or what have you. I did have one other thought, and that gets to the assessment question. We're talking about such a dramatic difference between CBT shares and the cost of Lake McIntosh. One consideration could be, and this is like, 15 minutes old in my head, so it's not fully developed. What if there were a fee on top of the basic share that was build a reserve so that any extraordinary assessments beyond what's in the budget could be
Restricted for that.
Go first there before it goes to the developer.
Well, it took me, I agree with you, it took me a little bit to kind of grasp all this as well. I think the biggest difference between these two shares that creates this significant disparity in their value is that CBT is wanted and needed along the whole Front Range. And people access it from Fort Collins to Loveland to Longmont to all the way almost to Denver. Lake McIntosh only serves this immediate region, and so there's really very limited customers. So it's not getting this constant bidding war on who's going to get it, because there's really very few people that have access to it. One is the city of Longmont, and others are probably a few ag users. And other than that, there's really no big push for it. So it's just such a different scale of competition for it that I think really it took me a bit too about why is it so different. But for Longmont, they said an acre foot of water is an acre foot of water as long as it's connected to our system.
I actually think the town should consider buying a chunk of shares at this price while they're available.
And that could be, and then you get into some of those earlier concepts that were brought up about banking water and some of those other, you can afford to do it at this rate. You can't afford to do it at $50,000.
Well, and as development does continue, and if infrastructure is put in to make that reach farther, I mean, it could become in higher demand.
Yes, and I did ask about this Highland Ditch relationship to Longmont as well. And they basically said Highland Ditch Company is the administrative component of almost all the reservoirs along the St. Vrain. That is not uncommon. That's purely what it does. They are not the governing body behind these shares. They're simply the administrative arm tracking water use and who owns what. So they did explain that. He said we would still work with Jill Beatty, their administrative assistant, when we want to purchase shares. But other than that, the governing board is not the Highland Ditch Board.
Trustee Caravas? Sorry, Trustee Caravas, please.
The current increase in the water rates just going in the dollar is, I think the way the letters is in, for this particular increase is the cost of treatment. On Longmont's water, coming from a state that does things a little bit differently, so this, I researched with some of the stuff that Lee talked about in the UEB meeting, helped out some of the UEB a couple meetings ago, and we've talked about up here a bit. Also in our water bill, if there's a major project on a supply like McIntosh, would that be built into a rate increase that goes out to the entire city of Longmont and us as well? Is that how they could fund a project like that also, besides just an assessment, but is collecting and taking care of the collection pools of the water part of our water bill too, correct? I'm assuming that just.
I would assume it's all their water sources and the cost to operate those, but I can clarify with them.
Well, that'd be interesting, because being around in a part of, in Nebraska, they call some things lakes, and they're not really lakes. They use that term pretty damn loosely. If you've ever walked across it's pretty mucky, muddy, like up to your knees, muck mud. And even in flood controls in Omaha and Lincoln are used, and the one close where I grew up just had to be dredged again, way sooner than it had to. And each home, I think it was 40 homes on this little thing, $68,000 assessment to each homeowner to dredge this thing. And it was excavators, side dump trucks. I mean, it's a big deal, and it's expensive to do because of the environmental permits that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. But doing something like that almost looks like it'd be a surcharge to all the users of that lake onto our water bills. So it'd be like an SID, a sewer improvement district. It just goes on your taxes. I would like to think that's how they would do it. We probably need to clarify that to help answer part of Trustee Browning's question. Because if they just pass the cost literally onto each share, look at how people in this valley are looking at the Martin Marietta project of trucks, dirt, dust, and being on a road. Well, dredging that lake should be the exact same thing. I mean, you're going to dredge it by digging it out with bulldozers and excavators, putting it in trucks, and hauling it down the highway. To somewhere, yeah. So that's just kind of helped me clarify. Because I would assume that's what it would be. It's what we pay for. If our rates have to go up $2 again, 8, 10 years from now, because it takes care of the holding system, well, that's great. Hopefully it won't be an assessment of $10,000 per share. Because that would really suck.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just one comment. The dredging will probably occur whether we do this or not.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
So that's, either way.
But we'll be part of the cost.
But, yeah.
Or paying for it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I think we should proactively think through and develop a reserve that would help to cushion that. And I think that the fact that there's such a difference, there's room in there to build in, something to build reserves. And even potentially reinvest in, that may be the reserve that helps buy some additional shares over time and so forth. Because in my mind, if it's 55,000 to, what's it, 14,000 or something?
7.
For which?
For the Macintosh?
7,000. It's 1.4.
1.4, okay.
1.4 shares.
Shares for how many dollars?
$7,000 a share.
7,000.
So you're looking at $10,000-ish. Yeah.
So so 10,000 to 55,000, that's a huge gap. And so, some people might think of that as arbitrage, right? And so I think there's a lot of thinking that could go on that benefits the town, that's actually good for the developers and affordable housing and so forth. If you build a reserve that can cushion for the assessment, potentially, buy, and help out the water fund.
Trustee Farrell.
So I just want to be clear, is the assessment charged to the person that owns the share or the town?
To us as the shareholder.
To us as
To
the
all
shareholder.
shareholders.
So, but if we've given X number of shares to X number of affordable housing,
We still own those.
still own
We still
that,
own
so-
those shares. They dedicate the shares to us.
Same way, they buy a share and
Okay.
dedicate it to the town.
so the assessment
yeah.
really should stay within our coffers versus something
Right.
else.
Think of it like an HOA, right? I mean,
Right.
HOA fee gets assessed to you for, an improvement project, same kind of concept.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I just needed that.
Trustee Brown.
Yeah, I do want to clarify, even though the recent assessments may have been $40 a year or something, I think, and I could be wrong about this, that their assessment varies from year to year depending on what they need to do. They had to replace some inflow and outflow pipes a couple of years ago, so I think that their assessment was more. If they got to dredge the lake, it'll be a lot more. And you're right, there's this huge cost discrepancy, but what I don't want to see happen is the town accepts a bunch of $7,000 Lake McIntosh shares, and then 5 years later, even though the Colorado Big Thompson assessments, I don't think vary that much because it's a
So big,
built
it's
out system.
huge.
It's so big, and they're spread out so much, you know, and there's all their revenue from their power sources and all that kind of stuff. That I think the upside risk for big Colorado, big Thompson shares is quite limited on your assessments. I want to see what upside risk there might be on assessments here.
Of projects they anticipate
And
in the next.
there's a thing that was on, I think, at the town of Longmont's website about the history of Lake McIntosh going back to 1903 and all that kind of stuff. I think the dam was built, and it mentioned in there that the lake is gradually silting up, and that wasn't a very recent website. It was, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. So maybe they've done some dredging in the meantime, but
I think after the flood, they may have done some improvements.
yeah,
So
I really like to see about that. And then I located the section of the Lions Code I was talking about whether we need to amend the code. We really, right now, have options to do 3 different things for water rights. Either Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, Colorado Big Thompson shares. We can actually take direct flow contract rights if somebody has those for direct water rights. And the third thing we can take, which is where this might fall in, but I'm not sure, it says rights represented by stock in a duly recognized and existing irrigation company. And I don't know if Lake McIntosh Reservoir Company
This is not an irrigation company,
or
no.
not. I don't, you know,
No.
so we probably have to do a code amendment before we can actually accept these.
Well, could I suggest, is that possibly just the path forward here, is to address it in the code? And in the code, we can actually spell out when those shares could be accepted and through what process.
And what section were you referencing, Trustee Browning?
It's hard to find.
It's 13.
17, 14, 10.
Oh, 17, okay.
It's down in the it's buried in the annexation requirements.
Well, that's one, as we've talked about before, one of the few triggers for, water shares.
And then we put it in there for non-annexation, but I don't know whether, that may not be in the online version yet. I don't know. So it took me a while to find it.
It is something that is somewhat of, I'm not going to say an emergency, but I do believe that our new affordable housing project hopes to be able to utilize these shares. So we will have to get those into place before, the next maybe 6 months when they need to purchase those.
Well, I think it would be good for this board to work on this because we're familiar with what, this all started here. And so it should be something we should be able to get
Maybe
through
we identify
by the end of the
who
term.
is the group that should be making these recommendations.
Well, I think that depends on how complex we want to make it. I mean, the more complicated we want this to be, I guess it's there's 2 ways to look at it. I look at it as if you're one of those things mentioned in the agreement, you have access to those shares.
Yeah.
It's kind of what are the reasons we wouldn't let them do it? If there are a few of those, we could try to nail those down rather than try to think of the world of things that should qualify for it. I mean, if it goes through site review, development plan review, and meets the comp plan goals, I mean, let's use the plans and the criteria we already have. And if it does, and it's economic development and it's going to create jobs, then you're good to go. And if you're affordable housing and it's deed restricted and meets all the criteria for that, I mean, if there are some things that we just really think shouldn't get this price break for some reason, we should try to think of those. And maybe I would say the Economic Vitality Commission should have, if they want to think of some reason why we wouldn't want a developer to have access to these.
If you have a drive-through.
Possibly,
Well, and that
I don't know, but again, those are comp plan things and zoning requirement things, so we don't have to recreate the wheel here.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with that. As I read the existing definition of what qualifies for commercial and economic development, it's basically anything. If you create a job, you qualify. And maybe that's why we want to keep it and use like you say, the other things we have, the other tools we have for managing it. But if somebody wants to put a strip center out, on Highway 66 with four drive-throughs and an adult business or something like that, this would be another way to address that. But maybe we don't want to use this to do it. Maybe we just want to say, you create a job, you qualify for this, you don't have to worry about it, but you also have to meet all the other
zoning, design.
Right. Yeah.
And if I may suggest, maybe the immediate step is to fix the dedication requirements in the codes. That seems to be a pretty baseline next step, and then think about all these other permutations of how we can restrict the use of this water.
By the time we do that, we can get answers to some of these other things.
Because I think it'd be a pretty simple fix just to add in
Yeah.
Instead of reservoir companies,
company, yeah.
and then you solve the problem.
Yep.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I did, to build on the review of the code and so forth, to make sure that it doesn't restrict or cause us to not be able to do some of the things like reserving relative to the cost and that sort of thing. So that enables that. So there's some language that would either enable it or make sure that there's nothing that restricts it.
Yeah, I can't think on the top of my head, but I think you'd probably around that concept would like to have something in the code which would enable it specifically, and so set out like a fee schedule, maybe even based on how much water you're buying or how the size of the tap or something like that.
So what I'm hearing people say is, let's keep the administrative burden low if we can, give the developer certainty through whatever process might be created, fix the code from the simplicity standpoint so the path is clear for current projects that are maybe hoping to access this, and look at fees for protecting the town from future potential assessments. And then I wrote down some of the questions that we want to still maybe try to get answers to. So I think that what you just said, it makes a lot of sense. Just look at getting that ordinance teed up to kind of fix the simple language, just to make these available via the code. And then I think with the input you've had tonight, you can start thinking about whether there's additional changes that need to be made. Does that sound?
Sounds reasonable to me. Yep.
Everybody good?
We
All
want
right.
to try to bring that back, just as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think I think we should do it soon. And I think we also have a couple other ordinances like the sanitation rates and things. And like these are,
Tree ordinance. Workshop or general business?
I think it depends. If it's a simple change, I don't know.
I think I'd like to start with this simple change,
Yeah.
and just say we can accept these, and then let's workshop through UEB and through other places. The other permutations of how this might work out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Next up is we had one item removed from consent. Number 5. I forget who got to it first. Trustee Farrell. Technically, it was you. Technically, you and 3 others.
If you just be a moment, so prepared and be there. First off, I just felt that this one was worthy enough to,
I just wanted to acknowledge that I felt that this was a little bit this was significant enough to take a moment to honor the Martin family. I don't know them personally, but going through the photographs and bringing back kind of the emotion of the flood and how it had changed our lives, the town's lives. And I don't know if they were on the property at the time, but nonetheless, this had to have, they were. Okay, so the significant impact that the flood caused them on a personal level. And so I just felt that, my hope is that in having this property deeded to the town of Lyons and preserving it to its natural beauty, that we are appropriately honoring the Martins and the legacy of this beautiful place on our river. So I felt that something needed to be said to that. And then I felt that based on some feedback that we had gotten via some emails about the wording of the first sentence of the last paragraph about the Martin property, that perhaps that should be amended.
So that, if I may?
Yeah.
The version that went up onto the website was the incorrect version from I had taken it out of the plan before the plan was amended the last time I brought it to you, and put it into the Martin file. And I had forgot to replace that with the updated version. So that
first sentence in the last paragraph reads differently, and I sent that out. I don't know if you received a copy. I can read the amended version. It should read, the town should plan to build a small trail to connect the primary loop on the site to the terminus of the CR 69, Colorado Route 69, and deter unplanned social trails. A small sign should be erected to read locals only. Please respect the privacy of our neighbors.
That's what I have, and I was about to try to make an amendment, but if it's not necessary.
No, it's not.
Then we're super. Thank you. That's all I have.
I was looking at the cover memo, and item number 4, legal issues. I'm just curious about what the rest of the sentence is.
I apologize for that. So there on the County Route 69, sorry, I said Colorado Route, County Road 69, thank you, where that comes from the south to the Martin parcel, there is disagreement about where that roadway hits the Martin parcel. Boulder County believes there's a right-of-way that goes, regardless of where that right-of-way is, it does access the Martin parcel, and because it has been historically used over time, that is the historic right-of-way. And so it should have said there is a historic right-of-way associated with a roadway or a historic easement associated with that roadway.
Okay. And we know that we'll need abundant documentation of that.
Right.
Because there will be objections.
Boulder County would like to get that because they need a turnaround for their trucks at the end anyway. There are pins out there, so after they have not surveyed it, but they went out and looked at the survey pins, and they believe that the survey pins indicate that the road does access the Martin parcel. So at this point, we don't have a survey that shows that, and we would need that at some point. Well, it's accessible from the other side, and
Not a public.
right, or there's a historic right-of-way access.
Right. If it's prescriptive, there wouldn't be documentation, but I mean, it would be up to someone else to challenge the existence of the prescriptive easement. So.
I think they believe they do have documentation.
So I was also going to pull this item, mostly because I just wanted to make one minor change to the 4th whereas, that where it says that Boulder County and the town of Lyons agreed, and the town agreed that upon request of the town that the county would transfer the Martin parcel to the town. That agreement extends beyond the Martin parcel. It applies to any buyout property in the Lyons primary planning area. And I'd just like to make sure that this reflects what our agreement actually is. So my proposed change would be to change Martin parcel to would transfer buyout properties located within the Lyons primary planning area, if this were to pass with that change. Are there any other concerns? If not, I would entertain a motion. Sorry, Trustee Browning.
Yeah, my main concern was the same one that Trustee Farrell raised, to make sure we clarified which was the proper Dr. Bob sentence, and that's been clarified, which I appreciate. I guess a follow-up question, Paul, to something you said. At what point is it anticipated that a survey would be done on this before it's transferred, or are they just going to basically quit claiming to us? Or
they do not want to perform a survey before transfer. It would be up to us to perform that. And right now, what you have before you is accepting that transfer.
Okay.
So if you would like to get a survey before that, we would probably need to continue.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just asking whose responsibility and when. It doesn't seem like to me we would need one.
Most likely ours before we do anything with that parcel, like any of the construction that we would do on there.
We don't have anything budgeted yet to start constructing that trail. So before we did that, we'd survey and see where we could put it, I presume.
Correct. we have no plan except for a conceptual plan for the Dr. Bob parcel, or for the Martin parcel, excuse me.
Yeah. Of course, I think the concerns that reflected in that sentence from the Dr. Bob plan are valid, that if we do nothing and let it sit there, that I think there will be some social use of it to go back and forth to Bone Park. And so while there may not be an immediate plan to go out and construct a designated trail, something that we may get, kind of pushed to do at some point if people are swarming all over the property once they know it's ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have already been people that want to construct a trail, a major trail through there. I know that.
Yeah.
There's been concern or desire from the mountain bike community because we lost the trail along Highway 7.
Yep.
So there's some desire for it to be not what is in the Dr. Bob plan, but a more a heavily used trail.
Okay. All right. Just so at some point we'll need to survey it. That's the idea. Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to, okay. I'll move to approve resolution 2019-111 relating to the Martin parcel.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I would just like to offer the amendment
Oh.
that we change the language in the fourth whereas,
Yeah.
as I stated earlier.
Yes.
I'll second the amendment.
And I just want to thank Mr. Farrell and Mr. Vernon for honoring the Martin family. I think that's certainly important. And I felt the same way. I was like, this can't really go by just on consent. And there was, something I thought needed to be reflected in there as well. So I'm glad you did that one. With that, I'll accept the vote on the overall motion. It passes 5-0, and I'll say this property belongs to the town. I'm so excited that it's ours. And it's just been part of the work of these years. It's a lot of work. All right, thank you. Next up is awards.
It's okay.
Either way, go ahead.
Unless you're super excited to.
Your light came on first, so you're good.
So I'm going to ask that you take one down and pass it around. Unfortunately, we don't have any beer, but anyway. I just wanted to show you the bottom pictures are,
That's really cool.
may I give one to them too, actually? The bottom pictures are the power box in Bone Park by the tennis courts, and it's almost finished. She's just going to be adding some final touches, and I think it is absolutely adorable. And so we are super excited about that. We found a landing spot for the Bell of Renewal, and there's already a nice big landing pad that Parks and Rec put in for it. I believe the stone was donated, and it's going to be at the entryway that's on the west side of Bone Park, where the steps. Right, exactly. So kind of where the steps are, adjacent to the steps, this will be there, and that's going to be a major walking thoroughfare. And so I think everybody feels really pleased that that spot really does honor the purpose of the bell. So we're excited about that. And then just at the top, Trustee Carabas is just kind of some of the goals of the Arts and Humanities Commission for the future. I'm a little shameless, but anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a quick summary. I'm not going to read it all to you, but some of the things that the commission is really working on, and not everything can be happening all at once as much as we would love, but their vision is pretty incredible, and so I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you. Oh, I actually had something else. I had some notes. One more thing. Not that this can really be discussed at this time, but one of the things that came up during the audience business sounded like kind of a legal concern. How do we deal with that?
So we are working on that issue right now.
Okay.
It is true that not just Jerry Moore, but another individual and potentially more own this property in joint tenancy. We don't know how that came to be, but it's a very small percentage of the property. Craig Ferguson does own at least 96% of that property, if not more. It's a very small portion of this property that is owned by other individuals. We're trying to work through that issue now.
Okay.
But the easement will have to be amended to include these individuals, and Mr. Ferguson has indicated he's working to secure those approvals. So.
And he also said he realized he signed that before he told us that there were these other.
That he should have told us, yeah. Yeah.
He said he will work with us to get it changed.
Okay.
Make sure you put that in big print.
It's in writing.
Well, I put it in big print
emails
on
from
the meeting minutes that we'll approve next meeting.
All right, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it's 1/3 of 5% is the ownership.
5%.
Is the ownership of Jerry Moore of this property. I don't know how it even came to be because the property record that we have access to doesn't indicate when that happened. So.
Not just joint tenancies.
Yeah.
The PCDC participated in the tour of the acquisition properties in Apple Valley. The PCDC actually would like for the process to be that the Parks Commission and the
Ecology.
and the Ecology Commission make the recommendations to the PCDC as opposed to the Board of Trustees. The PCDC then would process that and make, because it's primarily a land use decision, at least, that's the thinking. And then the PCDC would incorporate their thinking with the input and then make recommendation to the Board of Trustees. Just a comment, I think there are arguments for and against the acquisition properties. I think we should deliberate pretty thoroughly on that, or PCDC deliberate and present well thought through recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and then we can talk about it further here. There are some positives like annexation, future annexation, facilitation. On one hand, there are some possibilities like tree farm, high-end camping, fishing, schools, on and on. There are positive potential opportunities for those properties. Maybe not all of them, but certainly, several of them. I don't have a position one way or the other on that. It's just communicating what the people have been talking about. On the other side of it, there are costs for maintenance. We did note that there were some dead trees that will probably be fairly costly to remove because they're near power lines and so forth. There are also power lines across a couple of the properties, and then we have to understand whose responsibility is to trim them, make sure they don't, ruin the, and the potential fire hazard that's involved there and so forth. So, just that it's a complicated issue, we should give it due consideration. PCDC should first, and then the board. Also, the PCDC is also starting to ramp up, if you will, for the comp plan, starting to think through what would be the role for consultants, how much would that potentially cost, and what we would want to require in the contract so we don't run into some of the issues that we did with previous plans. And then I'll just briefly reference the URA negotiations, because the discussion actually should be at the URA meeting, but that we did have meetings with the library and the fire district. And, you know, I don't want to overstate this, but I feel a little bit better now than I did a couple of weeks ago. I just I think there's a path forward for both of those.
That's great.
I'm just knock on wood several times.
All right. Great. Trustee Browning?
I was unable to attend the last SFC meeting, but I've been in communication with them, and they've been working very hard on a pay-as-you-throw program. So they're also still working on the amendments to the Sustainable Action Plan, but you heard most of the results of their work tonight.
Trustee Garvis?
I already did that. I had just a quick question for staff or comment on consent item number 1 on the on your cover letter. When I talked about the cost, it kind of said the cost of that contract, you know, may be eligible, and we had stuff, the pipe may be used. Kind of misleading sometimes if the public's reading that, so I don't know what we can do with that. So, you know, basically it is true, but if there's a way we can reword those sometimes, I don't just.
Which one?
Oh, the first 2019-119. Because when the public's looking at us making a decision based on cost, and it's like, it may be eligible, that also means it may not be eligible, so we have to find funding for it. So just, if we can try to, I don't know. Someone called me and asked me about it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll bring it up. So, there you go. UEB, we may have found, the last couple of times I've mentioned, and Aaron's been talking about it for quite a long time, of water's been missing. Town's being billed more water than we are billing. Well, previous board asked that, you know, we decided that Parks has meters on all the parks, on the different parks, so we know what's being used where, so we could just allocate it and make sure it's, you know, it's just there. Well, we just found out that the one at Bone Park was not installed 2 years ago. So some of the water's there, so it wasn't going to get billed on to someone anyway, but it just shows usage. And I do believe a leak was found.
A leak has also been found.
And it's being repaired. Concrete was dumped on our new pipe over there. Some of us lost water last Monday due to that repair up high. So that might account for some of the water we also have been missing.
So 2 big,
Yeah, so 2 pretty big chunks. One, I guess both.
pieces.
Yeah. So hopefully that takes care of that. And someone on UB asked, just a quick update, bullet points, where we are with the pilot project dollars to date, and projects, just kind of a quick.
Sure,
I couldn't find my notes on it because I think we discussed it in May, and I didn't have any of that stuff at the meeting. I didn't know I was going to get asked. Ecology board, I think Tracy, between when I wrote my notes and Tracy's discussed with some of the people on they wanted more information on the SVCR 01, whatever the down here. Bank research just over there, so I think that's being taken care of. Brought up in the last meeting also the Apple Valley Bridge, north side, there's a nice bunch of pretty well placed flagstones. It's become a fairly popular boating drop-in point for kayaks and things. And they were wondering if the town owned it, and I kind of looked online. It looks like we do.
We own it, but we don't maintain it.
We don't maintain it, but they've been indicating it looks like it's fairly well maintained, looks good, and just the possibility with boating and river use being increased, talked about with other properties, and that great defunct plant you want to get rid of so bad. They even brought up that pay to park up there so people can drop in. So there you go. I'm working on you again.
First we need to decorate.
Yeah.
Somebody's.
Well, there you go. You can paint that. There you go. There you go. Let's.
You could do a sledgehammer.
Yeah. Looking to. I think they've been in contact with Dave on this. They didn't clarify very well in the meeting. They're looking to make sure Town of Lyons keeps track of chemical use with contractors, how much, where. I think we already discussed all that. And I tried to tell them that, but they were in disagreement. But I thought we discussed all that. So you may be hearing some more information from that, asking. Currently working, Barney, on a recommendation and a statement concerning the Apple Valley buyout properties to the BOT. They pretty much already have it done. So if the mayor would require all that stuff to go directly to PCDC, as you're requesting, I can indicate that to him, or it's probably going to come here directly, and then we can send it on.
Trustee Karavis?
Yes, sir.
Concerning the chemical use, is that with concern to the weed management plan?
Yeah, that's, because
we should
I
be
thought we discussed
tracking
that Dave keeps track of what's used, when, where, and how much, because you kind of have to anyway.
Pursuant,
And,
you should,
And
pursuant to
suppose
several
they can't get
things.
access to it, and I kind of didn't think that was, so just let Dave, he may be getting contacted again if he hasn't already. And those power lines you talked about, that would probably be very important as we were looking at them. So I was staring up at several of them, and they are missing their wire. Some of them are extremely old and are missing their insulation. So bare copper is showing on several of those lines over those properties we were looking at, which is no big deal.
In
Apple Valley on those properties.
Not properties we own.
No, not properties we own. Apple Valley properties. God, sorry, Connie. Did I scare you?
That's long line, isn't it?
I believe they are long, but I don't know for sure. But it's not necessarily that big of a deal, because if you touch one, you got to have two conducting. But a branch can definitely do that, so.
And we are not charged the contract milling Apple Valley.
Yeah, so just that, so Barney did bring up a very important point, that find out who's in charge of those lines and and what state they're in. Because like I said, a couple I looked at for sure are missing pretty good chunks of the insulation. So if something hits that and conducts to another piece, you are going to have sparks. If it's dry out, you're going to have a fire.
So refer that to the fire department?
Probably the police department to put the fire out. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
It's fine. It's their ultimate responsibility, strangely enough, under the state statutes.
Well, yeah. That's
and
good
if the fire is too big for the fire department, then they can basically kick it off to the police department also.
There you go.
Who knew, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like it's right up there with water law.
But seriously, whether it's our property, the county's property, or anybody's property.
People should know.
If we're aware of that, we don't want a fire out there.
No, I'll.
I know, I don't want a fire out there.
I'll let Longmont Power know.
I think one of them was the first property we looked at.
One of the rural electric companies. They're both out there.
Okay. And then Trustee Farrell. I'm going to get you back now.
But if it's a district.
Tomorrow, 9 to 3, Lions volunteers are building fence posts, setting concrete and stonework over at the Botanic Gardens.
Oh, lovely.
Last time we did it, the average age was pretty old, so we need some young people. Yes. So.
I'm coming over tomorrow to increase that average.
You are?
Yeah.
We need Trustee Farrell there. We need to average that. We get that average down. Any help is wanted and will be accepted. Thank you.
Very nice
Thank you for your support.
All right, well, I'm a lot quicker than you are tonight, I think. I had to skip the Parks and Rec Committee because I've missed the last 3 band concerts, and my kids were like, you're coming. So I went and watched my kids play trumpet. I did have a nice meeting with Representative Jonah Goose about a week ago. It was nice. It was me and Superior, so we got his full attention for a better part of an hour. And, he's very interested, and he's really reached out and connected with the mayors on a really regular basis, at least once a quarter. We did a conference call last time. This time he invited us while he was back in the district. So he's really been engaged with us at the local level. I know Superior and some of those areas are having huge issues with the FAA and flight patterns going over their communities. So he's been more involved with some than others.
Good luck.
He and I were going to talk about maybe getting together next time I'm in DC to go over and visit with FEMA and just kind of try to meet with the people there and talk about, what does the future look like for any potential clawbacks and audits and things like that, and just how terrifying that is. So we're going to still go talk to them about how we don't want any of that to happen to us, and we're following all their rules as best we can, and they're highlighting us as a model community for how to recover from floods and all that. So he's also interested in maybe doing a press release about our recovery, and highlighting some of our accomplishments. I also sent him, he was also really interested in our student commission. He's got a lot of neat things he's doing for students around the district. There's like an app contest that they can get involved in, designing, coding, whatever. And then he was gonna, I didn't tell them this because if he didn't do it, I didn't want him to be disappointed, but he was gonna try to send them letters of congratulations for being appointed to the commission.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I thought that'll be cool if he gets that. But they're also looking at, he said there might be some, he might, that he's very interested in the vaping issue. He thinks there could be some federal legislation if the FDA doesn't take action. So he said, keep them posted on what we're doing here. And they actually meet tomorrow night. And a representative from Boulder County Health Department offered to come and speak to them.
Oh, that's awesome.
About their policy and what statistics they have around teen use for vaping and helping them ultimately, hopefully, come to a decision tomorrow night. If you want to come watch, it's really fun. They're a fun group. So they're very excited and very on top of their agenda. It's 7 p.m. here. So if you have nothing other and you want to come and be inspired, come watch these kids.
Yeah, not more than 30. I was going to post it.
I think I sent the agenda around to you guys. Maybe I didn't. I'll make sure it gets to you tomorrow. That's it for me. So it is. Hi, Caleb.
Hi, I've been with you guys the whole time.
How are you feeling?
I'm sure my voice would work if that's to speak up. I missed the EDC meeting because I was out getting sick out in California. But I hope perhaps Trustee Dreisdale could make a report since he was there. What do you think?
Yeah, I was there, Caleb, and it was actually a very good meeting. There was some progress and discussion about development of a periodic report similar to what is done in Estes Park, reporting on progress on some key success factors for the town, which that was very interesting. And I'm trying to remember. There are 2 new members who were very active and I think will be contributing considerably to the group. Those are the major things I recall, but I think the group actually is starting to coalesce very nicely.
That's great. Sorry you are not feeling well. Trustee Roberts, I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there on the phone. That's not easy to do.
Through the executive sessions, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I've called into many executive sessions, so.
You said he did.
Yes, I was planning to.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a summary of action items?
Me? Okay.
I'm going to go at the top. Need the questions that they had about pay as you throw and get the answers back to the people that asked them. We need to fix the code in the, to do with the future assessments for the Macintosh water.
And steps to change the ordinance,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
prepare those.
Pilot program update from Parks on contractors using chemicals and weed management plan.
As well as SVC bank restoration update. We'll have a flood update next time. I'll notify Longmont Power in case those are their lines out to the north. And then the rest are budget items from the workshop.
And then I have one to work out the issues with the permanent easement on 500 West Main, aka Plant Bluegrass.
And then we still have some follow-up items from the last time. I don't know if that format will.
I thought that was a great list. Yes, that was really great. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. So we do have a few follow-up items from that. I don't have it up if anyone does, if you want to review those. We have those handy.
Planet Bluegrass's annual report.
Yep, annual report, Planet Bluegrass.
You've got CDOT, Pell, IGA,
Yeah.
R1 condo subdivision process.
For Planning Commission to consider, but we have that by the end of the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have ordinance for the rate increases that are reflected in the budget.
How did we not get that highlighted? Yes. Was that in the workshop, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought there was one more budget-related one.
Well, there were several budget. There was the determination of, we're gonna look at the allocation of recovery projects compared to funds to determine if we want to look at reserves or set-asides per fund. The ordinances for water and sewer. Take at the Laura board, maybe bring up if they want to consider going out for new attorney services at the end of the year.
But there's the Town of Lyons.
And then the Town of Lyons needs to
Laura.
determine their contribution toward the TIF. And then EcoPass program, there's some considerations there we need to bring forward and some data.
Okay. That's good. I guess at this point, we can entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I would actually move that we take a 5-minute break.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just like, I just.
Is there a second?
Congratulations.
Yes, is there a second for, all in favor, break, aye?
Yeah, we'll do.
We'll be back.
What was the motion?
Hopefully we survive.
Are you going
First, second.
A short, very short 2-day honeymoon to Steamboat, and then hopefully a later one, a larger one in the spring when I don't have 5 trials. Settled 3 of them. I had a good week last week. I got 3 cases settled in 1 week. So I mean that was big. One I thought there was no
I move to go into executive session. I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4B for the purpose of receiving legal advice from attorneys representing the town regarding the MOA with Lyons Properties and the town's legal complaint against Lyons Properties in Boulder County Court.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Okay, it passes 5-0 in the executive session. It is October